Okay, we are live. This is the pilot episode of my new Counter-Strike Go talk show. It's called Counterpoints, with a little hyphen in between. See what I did there, Devilwalk?
I see it.
It's gold right there. It's fucking gold, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you, Devilwalk, as they call you. I know you appreciate a good name, and especially you, On Fire Anders, Room On Fire. Like, I think out of the three people here, at least I've established myself as the best at coming up with names. But we'll just start the show out like that. So my guest number one is Devilwalk from fnatic. You guys probably think of him as Devilwalk, you know, Counter-Strike Go world champion, member of a legendary team like fnatic. I like to think of him as sort of like Fiflaren light, you know, for people who want to diet. They don't want to go full Fiflaren. You never go full Fiflaren, by the way. They just want 75% of a Fiflaren with a goatee, a beard. They want Fiflaren with facial hair. That's how I think of him. So hello, Devilwalk. Thank you for coming on my show.
I'll take that as a compliment. No problem. I'll take your Fiflaren hypothesis or whatever as a compliment.
He's one of the best players of all time, right? Very successful player. Yeah, exactly. It was meant as a compliment.
One of the most achieved players of all time. So I'll take that as a compliment.
No, sure. And my other guest here, some people like to think of him as the best commentator in history, who, simultaneous to commentating the event, actually worked for the team that won all the events and thus was entirely unbiased. That's how some people like to think of him. I like to think of him as the person who got rid of Risk doing commentary, and so I give, you know, my gratitude is unending in that respect. Got rid of Warclown as well. Like, in many ways, you are like, I'd give you like the sort of one of those like awards for like Man of the Year. Like your contribution to Counter-Strike Global Offensive can never be fully understood, the scope of what you've done for us. You're sort of like Martin Luther King. You had a dream, and then that dream has now come true. So, hello, Anders.
Hello. Can we Photoshop that somehow? Can it be me like slaying Risk and everyone else with a sword, a broadsword maybe?
You were like, I have a dream one day of ninjas in pajamas and Hellraisers playing together, but without Risk and Warclown doing the commentary. And that dream came true, Anders. We live in that brave new world. Thank you for your contribution to the scene.
Yeah, that's really all I wanted. I'm going to be leaving soon now that it's been accomplished.
So
exactly.
Actually, let's just start off with where Anders is at, because we all know where Devilwalk's at, and I want to kind of ease into that. Okay, and you never just go in dry on someone. Okay, you have to romance them. You have to take about polite conversation, warm them up a little bit, get a sense of the temperature of the room. I've learned these things, or someone told me them. But let's just start out, Anders, with what's going on with you, because you teased that this big news was coming. Guys, this big news coming in a few days. In 1 hour, there will be some big news. And I was thinking, like, wow, this is going to be incredible. Like, there must be some really important news. And you were like, guys, I'd like to publicly announce I've changed the name of my Twitch channel. That is all. And everyone's like, oh my God, what does it mean though? What are the implications? Does that mean that, what about this? Does it mean this? And you were like, no, I just changed the channel's name. and they were like, yeah, but what does that mean though? Like, are you going to be making more money? Do you go? And then they're like, no, guys, you're getting really confused here. I just changed the Twitch channel name. And they were like, oh, okay, thanks. Like, what's going on, Anders? Am I incorrect here?
No, I mean, that's definitely part of the news, right? But there is a different part to it. Of course, the whole idea of leaving the NIP organization, which has brought me a really long ways. But I guess rename the channel. But we wanted to kind of give out the news in smaller segments. So the other piece of news was just announced today with our $14,000 or euro tournament actually, with Case King. So it'll come slowly trickling in on you. You're not going to get all of it at the same time. That's the plan.
Okay. So in that case, you even said in your statement, like, it's generally a cosmetic change. Is the goal in mind to actually have some sort of impact, like, on what you do? As in, for example, would this in any way change you being able to be hired to different events that you couldn't do before for whatever reasons, or something along, or maybe now you and Semmelers are more of like a package deal, like you have to take both of us because we're both booking in, whereas before people saw it as like there's Anders and then Semmelers does some stuff, but does he have to do every event? Is that going to affect anything, do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe there was some confusion earlier, and it was a little bit confusing to Semler and I as well, because Semler had just sort of been, hitching a ride on for a long time, but we had actually sort of told each other that, well, we wanted to keep doing this together. But, I still kept introducing everything as being, I'm here on, NIP TV with Semler and, so it still felt like he was just a guest on the show every time. He just happened to be there every single day. And now I think we've made it a little bit more clear that it is actually our project together. So that, I think, it helps a little bit from sort of, from people looking in on the outside. In terms of being hired for tournaments, I'm not sure that will make a big difference. I don't think NIP was ever a hindrance to being hired somewhere else. Though we do hope that we can now use the channel for more things. But it is a pretty hard thing to try and convince other tournaments to let them use your channel instead of their own channel. That's an argument we have continuously with all sorts of people. And why would you, if you were Dreamhack or ESL, why would you put your show on Room on Fire? We're going to have to try and come up with some really persuasive arguments, I think, and we will try.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of get a sense of where you were at to begin this chat. So you brought us some interesting points there, like you said about how before it was like there was one of you, basically you're like a team now. Okay, you've got this team that you go forwards with, and we can trust each other, and like you said, before it was sort of like he was just hopping on and maybe riding your coattails a little bit. So speaking of like real teams that stick together and people riding people's coattails, let's talk with Devilwalk about Fnatic now. So the news came out a couple of weeks ago that Fnatic, and listen, I was shocked by this. Apparently, Fnatic wanted to remove 2 of their players. Now, the reason I was shocked by this, now listen, people have speculated for a long time, right, Anders? Like maybe olofm will join NIP, or maybe he'll join Fnatic, or maybe Fnatic should remove X player or Y player. But actually, it didn't look from behind the scenes like it would ever happen. Because especially if you ever talked to the Fnatic players, they were always really insistent, right? That like, listen, we're a family, we're brothers, we've been through a lot together. We were together during the good times, and we're going to stick through the bad times. And then one day we're going to get to that World Championship again. We're going to prove all of you wrong. And so I thought to myself, well, I mean, these are men of integrity. They stand by their word. They believe in each other. They believe that family and like staying together is the strength in the game. It's not about skill. It's not about headshots. It's about believing in each other. It's about having that team spirit and knowing that if you go into battle, this guy has your back. Am I wrong here, Devilwalk? I'm confused. What's going on?
Obviously, I still believe that a strength core of a family more like than an actual just short-term deal where things go wrong. Obviously we had a lot of internal problems, and the only way I could see to fix this family was making this decision. So I still believe in that, and I don't want to say I'm a hypocrite for that. Obviously I wanted to stay together as long as possible, but I couldn't see the future for that. So I had to make a realistic move and make this change. So I don't know if that answers your question, or
I can always ask more questions. So I mean, to stick with the analogy, people are going to think, well, I mean, if you guys were a family, like how could you remove someone from the family? But actually, if you think about it, like if one member of the family starts like doing drugs and drinking too much, eventually you have to kick them out. And then, maybe another one, listen, it just doesn't work out between mom and dad. So dad has to go and live somewhere else. And we can still see him on weekends. Well, he'll still come over. We'll have occasions, but he won't be living in the house anymore, okay? And you know what? Mom needs a new dad, so she's going to be seeing someone else now, and we're going to bring him into the family, and so this analogy still holds. Like, I don't think you're a hypocrite at all. We've made it work at Devilwalk there. It's working. But okay, even though I'm like joking now, there is a serious component to this that I want to ask you about, which was after the Dreamhack Winter win. Okay, at that point when you were at the absolute peak of Fnatic, when like you won this huge tournament, everyone's thinking like, oh, maybe Fnatic's going to be, maybe now it'll be like NIP, Very Games, of Fnatic. Maybe those are the 3 names that everyone will be thinking are going to win all the events. Over the next few events, when there were problems, you were a team who thought, at least internally, right, like, oh, well, one thing we're definitely not going to do is change players, right? Like, we're going to stick with this team and ride out as long as we can, right? That was the thinking, right?
Yep. I think after winning Dreamhack Winter, there was like this huge break, which always there always is after the last event in the winter. and we couldn't really ride the wave of success. I would like to point out the EMS winners, Virtus Pro, kind of had tournaments week later, you know, a couple of weeks later, whilst we kind of got, I don't know, like into this mood. Like we took a huge break, and we couldn't really find ourselves getting back to where we were after taking that. We obviously still thought we were as good, but you know, people practiced hard and you know, came up ahead on us, and we weren't really prepared for that. You know, being a very unexperienced team in that sense as well, winning our first major championship, and just think it was too much for us to kind of, we weren't prepared for it at all, I guess.
If Fnatic had gotten out of the group stage at Dreamhack, and listen, with the way the bracket came out, you might have even got a semi-final out of it. You know, I mean, Epsilon got to the semi-final without necessarily beating anyone good. If you could have got like a top 4 or a top 8 finish, do you think this move still would have happened? Do you think maybe you would have try another event before making any moves? What's your sense?
We probably would have stayed longer. You know, just the amount of irritation and disappointment just dropping out of a group stage probably was the tip of the scale. And you know, if we were made a top 4 at that event, I'm pretty sure that we would have continued testing and trying to figure things out. So yeah.
When we went back in, if we go back in time to Dreamhack, after that event, when you had like the 3rd place finish at the Invitational for Dreamhack, that was like an okay result. Like the only teams you lost to were in theory the best teams. Then you after that was when the results went downhill. Okay, you had like the ESL, well, EMS one at the time, where obviously it didn't go very well. You got to the round of 8, and people were expecting, when they saw that bracket, because at the time people didn't really know who LGB was, you know, people thought, okay, well, Fnatic's at least going to go to the semis. Okay, they're going to go to the semis and meet Virtus Pro, and then we'll see how they do against Virtus Pro. But instead, he dropped out there, and then obviously there was the other tournaments. There was Copenhagen Games, and as we go on, it was like a gradual, the numbers going down for the results. Okay, from my side, like I'm gonna think to myself, okay, well, I never thought Fnatic was actually like elite level. Like I never thought they were a Very Games or a NIP. Okay, but I thought maybe they could be like 3rd or 4th, and then I thought maybe they could be top 6. So from internally, what was going on that the results are dropping like that?
You know, obviously after losing to LGB, which was a huge disappointment, we had so many rounds we could have won, but kind of failed to execute correctly. And, you know, I think we just internally started blaming people like within the team for not succeeding that event. So I think that's when the problem started to mount up for us, and was very difficult to actually resolve. And it's hard to describe or develop in this thought.
Anders, when you saw the results of the Fnatic, like I'm describing, like from number 1 in the world, well, at least for that tournament, to gradually they're going down over the next few tournaments, was there a point where you ever thought like, oh, they'll probably have to remove people now, or they should remove people? Like, was there? Can you think of a time period when it started to make sense, or that maybe came in your mind?
I think the reason it was really hard to imagine that happening was because of the length of time the 4 of you had been together, all the way since Epsilon, where you had Sentries with you, the Norwegian player. And then, you know, you guys had been sticking around for a long time. So I suppose that if anyone had to be removed, even though he was just added for your victory at Dreamhack Winter, it seemed like maybe it would have been Pronax, because he was the odd guy out. But at the same time, I'm not sure it crossed my mind. I still had a feeling, especially when things were going. I think when things hit an all-time low, I just told myself a number of times, this is probably just Fnatic trying to reinvent themselves. You know, go back to square one and try and play really basic Counter-Strike and then work your way up from that point. So actually, I was just casually waiting, because we've seen this from other teams too, that they have just periods of horrible play where they play really badly and everyone thinks they're never going to do anything. Then they show up 2 weeks later, and you know, obviously there's a limit to how much you can improve in 2 weeks, but sometimes it can actually be quite impressive. I think Hellraisers is one of the teams that performed horribly. And then, half a month passed by, maybe 3 weeks, and they came back as Hellraisers, and they did really well. So I was expecting something similar to happen to Fnatic. Maybe, I don't know, a roster change was not something I had in mind.
When I did that article about Fnatic after they won DreamHack, I asked you at the end, essentially, did you think it was a fluke that they won? And because everyone pretty much agreed, okay, the bracket was a lot easier for Fnatic to reach the semis at least, and potentially to reach the final, because there wasn't any elite level teams in the way. Nip and Very Games were on the other side, and then Astana Dragons had already been taken care of by Call, so it was actually in theory an easier run. Now that would have been a top 2 anyway, so that would have been a big placing. But then I even asked you, like, did you think them beating Nip was like a fluke? Like, would it have happened? And you actually explicitly said, like, no, it probably was a fluke. So where were you actually thinking of where Fnatic was after DreamHack Winter? Did you really think they were at the level of like the Nip and Very Games at the time, Anders? Like after the result, obviously.
Yeah, I think the bracket did play a big role, but I think what we've seen since is that in the major tournaments, or even just last DreamHack summer, is that the bracket is just like that right now in the top scene. For DreamHack Summer, I think it was Na'Vi who they had to beat Virtus Pro, but then they kind of went their way for the upper bracket. I think NIP had a lot tougher run in that tournament because the lower bracket had Hellraisers and Titan and every other team you can even think of. So that was much more tricky. Whether or not they could do it again, yeah, I still think the constellation of players and this new team is, I think we're gonna have to see, but it looks promising right now. But I do think that. I think the mistake a lot of people make when they think about the top teams is that they think about the 2 top teams, or maybe the 3 top teams, and then they imagine that the gap between top 3 and then the rest is a really wide gap, and I don't think that's true. I think it's much closer than that. I think really small adjustments can make really big differences. So yeah, then it comes down to who's going to put in the most work and really make it happen. And I don't see a reason why Fnatic couldn't have come back on top again.
Okay, I've got some. I'm glad you asked that because I've got some reasons for you too. Okay, and here's the thing though: if I say something now, like people are going to think because Fnatic's results went down, that since I've always said I didn't think they were that good, that people are going to think that this is just me saying like forcing you to admit like, yeah, well you were right, like they weren't that good. But that's actually not true. Like for example, I know Devilwalk doesn't think that. So if he doesn't think that, then actually the reason why I'm going to bring this topic up is because I want him to give me what his reasons are why he doesn't think that. Like, how would he articulate his thoughts on why something happened, or what is the reason why this isn't the case? So I'll give you an example to start off with Devilwalk. One of the reasons why I thought, even though they had a really great tournament at DreamHack, why I thought that wouldn't happen again and you wouldn't win a big event, and I even said as much after that tournament to you, was because I thought to myself, okay, the style of play that won them that tournament was like a really unique set of circumstances, because you had Pronax had only played in your team for one event before and was basically the event that Nip wasn't at, and it was where you just played Very Games in the final and you played like there's like a couple of okay teams at that tournament. It wasn't a big tournament. You'd only had him a short amount of time and you'd only played one tournament, and his style of play as an in-game leader is almost like suited for almost like a mixed team style almost, or less of like a full-on, like the enemy knows what we're going to do, we know what we're going to do, and we're just going to like play that out. It's not really like an existing style, okay, it's more loose. And so I thought to myself, okay, that worked really well at DreamHack, but in the future, as soon as all those top teams have a chance to like look at Fnatic's game and play them more and play them with Pronax, you know how it is in the game, like people just get a sense for what you're going to do in a game, and they make a little adjustment and you make a little adjustment to try and fix that. But ultimately, the style, as people get to know more and more, I didn't think that style would work to win like a big major championship. I mean, does this aspect play any role in the results not being as good since DreamHack, do you think, Devilwalk?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, the first point to point out, I mean, it's obviously it's easier to get to the top than to stay at the top. It's a lot harder staying at the top. And people, as you say, they figure out what you're doing and your patterns on how you call, etc., like during practice and everything. So it's obviously a lot harder. But I still think that during our problems, we were trying to figure out another kind of style that would fit us without being so predictable, because we'd played the same style for a long while. So we're trying to figure that out, but we couldn't really find something. And it became, very, very hard to keep motivation when you kept failing at different styles and different kind of play. But I still obviously believe that we could have found it and could have kept on during better circumstances, I guess. But yeah, it's very hard staying at.
Yeah, just jump in.
All right, so the way it looked, and maybe this is just because of, as you said, like trying to find new styles, but it seemed to me like there was a time in Fnatic when a lot of the plays, the map that comes to mind right now for me is Inferno, but it felt like a lot of the time the strategy, or at least a lot of the weight, was on JW getting an entry frag somewhere and doing it with the AWP. And it felt like if that didn't work, then absolutely nothing worked. Like even basic Counter-Strike stopped working. So it felt like now when I'm watching Fnatic now, I look at JW and I see him trying the AWP when he's feeling really good with it. But when he's not, he just switches to another weapon and he just focuses on that. And he can play just fine with a rifle. So it's not like it's a big downgrade. But it felt like you guys were sort of banging your heads against the same wall that, you know, was just JW, pick up a rifle, please try and win for us. And if that doesn't work, then it stops working altogether. Was there ever a point in time when anyone in the team articulated something like that?
I mean, we tried changing up positions, try to let people work different angles, but obviously JW has been huge part of our success, getting, you know, an entry frag, creating rotations from the CTS T-minded player. So once he gets those entries, we're really, really good at actually closing the rounds. But we, as you said, we just kind of fall flat if he doesn't get that. We don't really know what to do, and we struggled a lot with that, together with actually finding another kind of play style. But I do agree that we had that problem as well.
So this is another thing that's an issue, is that another way you can look at a team is, we've talked before, you look at the overall placing, you can look at like the style and the leadership, and then you have to look at the roster eventually, which is why teams make roster changes. So when I look at the roster, I also looked at this Fnatic roster and I was like, with these players, like, I can't see how this could be the best team in the world. Like, okay, maybe they could be like 3rd or 4th, and then maybe that means every now and then you could win a tournament. A similar scenario, say you had a miracle run and you had an amazing game in the final, you could win in that sense. But you wouldn't consistently with that roster, at least from what I thought, be able to beat like a NiP or a Very Games. These sorts of teams, if you played them in a best of 3. You always have told me, and I've always like stood up for your teammates on this, and you always told me, okay, no, I would always describe it like this. I always said, like, every top team in CS has a superstar player, at least one. And that superstar player, almost every game you can rely, like, he'll just come amazing frags. Like Get Right, Shocks, Dosia, Guardian, whoever it is, every really, really top level team has that one player where it's like, if you were just a fan, you could just watch that one player on GoTV, you know, and you'd see something incredible. In Fnatic, it looked like you never had that one guy. Like, some games it'd be JW, then another game it's Flusher, and then every now and then Schneider would have a really good game. But in general, there wasn't like the one superstar. Like, there wasn't the one player. Like, this is the guy who will like carry us to the title. I mean, am I wrong on this?
No, you're not wrong. But I still believe that, as always, I think most of the time, like why we struggled a lot as well is because we weren't really focused on practice. We kind of was loose practice wise, and we didn't, you know, practice efficiently. And it just, you know, if you don't do that on a top level, then you're not gonna reach like being the world's best team, obviously. But I still believe if we used our time more efficiently, that we could have been. But I agree that, you know, I obviously see all of them 3 being big star players in my eyes, but from an outside perspective, I can see your point, and I don't really know if that's good or bad. I would actually, like, it's 50-50. If everyone can step up, then obviously that's a better way of having it.
Okay, so Anders, you were one of the people who's responsible for the JW hype. Because you're one of those guys where in those online games, when he'd go crazy with the AWP or whatever, you'd be like, oh, he's incredible, one of the best players in the world. Like, think back through your mind now, Anders. How many big semi-finals, round of 8s, did JW just go mental versus a really good team, a team better than them, and like dominate them? I can think of almost none on LAN.
I can think.
No.
Western Wolf. Epsilon,
I
Western,
think.
Yeah, we're talking about since DreamHack Winter, mate. Not shit of 1 year ago. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Continue, Anders.
So yeah, I exactly understand the point you're getting at, and this sort of ties into what I was going to bring up, which is one of my reasons for picking Fnatic as I think one of the teams that could have been a very good team in 2014 or going onwards, is because they're generally very young players, and I think some of the stuff they ran into later on, maybe after DreamHack Winter. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole idea of winning DreamHack Winter, because you said, keeping up practicing and stuff like that. If you've just won $100,000 and you got to find motivation to go and practice for the next LAN, which is what, like,
another 100 grand is a pretty good motivation.
Yeah, but at that point, nobody knew when that was going to come up. The next LAN after that was, the next one we actually knew about at that point was Copenhagen Games. And, it's just, there's a long break between. Then, obviously, Cologne was announced, or EMS 1 was announced after that. But there was still a long break. And I imagine, I have a similar doubt sometimes when I watch, when I look at the international now, the Dota, I think the team that wins, how do you as a manager, as a coach, go in and tell those people, yeah, I know it's a week later, but you guys got to get back to practicing. You got to stay the best. So that's just like a smaller side. When it comes to JW himself as a person, I feel like he is, and this is something he shares with a lot of other AWPers I've noticed, is that it's a question of confidence. If you have the confidence to take those really incredible shots, you just play much better. And on LAN, a lot of that confidence goes right out the window, especially if you're playing against a team like, NIP or Virtus Pro, some of these people that have been playing the game for more than 10 years. I think it becomes very tricky taking those, just to go back to Inferno on the CT side, those apartment shots that he was so well known for taking. You gotta do it. And when you miss the shot the first time, then, it's the fourth round. You've just bought an AWP with all your money. You don't even have any head armor. You just run up there and then you throw it away. You get shot down. Somebody hits you in the face and you're dead. Then, you have to eco next round, and then the sixth round comes around and you got to buy it again. All of a sudden, you can't do that too many times. It just gets thrown away. And I think the confidence to actually keep doing it and eventually succeed comes from playing the game a long time, and also comes from, just years of experience. And I'm not sure that the Fnatic team has that just yet. But if they play together for a longer while, I think it'll come. And I think that will be a change that's very hard to undo again.
When you said that thing about motivation, I let you go. Okay? I just thought, let him go.
Yeah.
Let's hear the full thing. Like, okay, the example you gave was a very good but very extreme example. You gave the example of winning the international and winning like $5 million, and then only a week later, they say, like, listen, you have to practice really hard for this next tournament. Oh, what's first prize? Oh, this is like just the group stage. You're not even in the final yet. Oh, I can't be bothered then. In that scenario, okay, I'll grant you, that was such an extreme example. It's possible that you might not be that motivated the next week after winning millions of dollars. But winning 100 grand, split 5 ways, and then 3 months later, having someone say, would you like to win another 100 grand? Yeah, I can't really be fucked, to be honest. I just won one like 4 months ago. Like, that doesn't quite work. Okay, I'll give you I'll bring you into the thought. Since this is my fucking show, yeah, you can answer in a second. Since this is my fucking show, we're just going to come immediately to a classic Thorin level analogy, okay? So there's like a really dumb way that men think about women and people's girlfriends, and that when it's okay, so in the media, let's say David Beckham, when he's married to Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice, a famous like star. She's a very beautiful woman, very classy looking woman. There was a famous newspaper story where he'd actually cheated on her with his maid, I think it was, when they were in Spain. And every single idiot out there, aka normal person in the world who reads newspapers, saw that story, and their reaction wasn't like, it's wrong to cheat or that. They all said this logic, right? They said, well, why would he cheat on her when he has Victoria Beckham at home? And that logic there, right, betrays like a misunderstanding of how even they would react. Because here's the thing, David Beckham wasn't sleeping with that woman and every time thinking to himself, oh, why should I do this when I could just go home and have that? He was thinking, I've already got that. Why don't I have this as well? So I'm already having sex with her. I know, why not have sex with her and have sex with her? And if I don't get caught, there's twice as much sex. When you think it that way, it's actually only logical. That's like, anyone can understand why I did that. In the same scenario, if I have an awesome one night stand with a girl, right, and she like blows me, it's amazing, best sex of my life. if I wake up a week later and I have to go and I'm going on a date with a different girl and she's not quite as good looking, she's still good looking, she's not quite as good looking, I'm not going to go like, well, listen, love, it's been a great date, but I'm not going to have sex with you because I had sex with a much better looking woman a week ago. No, in that scenario there, I don't have I can't retreat into my imagination. I have a choice. Have sex with this girl now, who's not as good looking, but have sex, or have nothing. Like, I can't, it's not if I can, like, the Matrix, so I can, like, replay my dreams or whatever and experience them again. That's gone. That's past. It's over. So in the same sense, even if it's only for 10 grand next week or a month in advance, that 10 grand there is going to be better than not winning the 10 grand. Therefore, there's the motivation in itself right there. Now, Devilwalk, it looked like you wanted to jump in on me there, so now you can come into the fray. What do you have to say here, buddy?
Just by how you actually described it was like, okay, I won $100,000, and let's put a poll up here. Yes or no? Do I want to win? Obviously, you want to win, but it's about like putting as much time as you do. You know, people who didn't win obviously put more time into preparation, wanting to win. You know, trying to push like Fnatic out of the actual what do you say? Competition, or
they want to overcome you and jump ahead of you.
Yeah, exactly. And we were lazy of thinking that we would stay good, whilst other progressed, and we kind of stepped back, taking a. It's not as easy as just pushing a button and I won $100,000 more. You know, it takes a lot of hard work, and you kind of have to put that into your calculations.
You're absolutely right. So let me just take a step back. And let me take what you've just said there and put that into my scenario, okay? So let's say, for example, that to meet that really hot girl, I had to go through a lot, okay? I had to be on top of my game with talking to her. I had to have flowers, dinners. I had to have very good banter, take her for walks, get to know her as a person. Then I got to sleep with her. Awesome. But then when I meet the girl next, okay, who's not as good looking, now it's like, I don't want to go through all that again just for a girl who's not even as good looking, right? Yeah, I mean, applying your logic here. Here's the problem. That would only work if I had put in all that hard work to get the first girl. If I'd just had, like, 3 days before, I'd just, like, bang together something like, I'll probably just tell her these jokes and, just take her to this bar nearby, and then I got that girl, then I couldn't just be like, well, to get the next girl, I'd have had to put in an incredible amount of work, and because I was on top with that other girl, like, I couldn't make myself do that. That's the problem, Devilwalk. You didn't put in that work to begin with. You had like 9 days with Pronax or something, and then he just like fucking pulled a bunch of strats out of his ass on like half the maps, and then you won 100 grand. He did press a button, and you won 100 grand. He pressed like a fucking... Well, he didn't press a button. He threw some dice, and then they came up like all sixes, and you won Dreamhack Winter. So you never did that work in the first place, right? You were never a super dedicated team before Dreamhack Winter, were you?
We're a pretty dedicated team.
Were you up at the level of the nips of the very games? This level of dedication?
No, but obviously we were at that point. We were better than nip. So
in practicing, as in dedication to practice and motivation and all that, you were more than nip.
We would practice more than nip, yes.
Okay, so why not practice afterwards then?
You know, we practiced a lot before. You know, we always have been a team who practiced almost 2-3 hours each day more than everyone else. Mostly because we were so sloppy that we kind of had to put in more practice because, we weren't as efficient on our practice. But I think we were more dedicated than most teams.
I have something to add as well. So I think something that, you know, the way we've been talking about a team, we've took the whole team and just assumed that team is basically one person and said, why doesn't the team practice? But actually, what I've got from talking to all kinds of different teams, some of the American teams when I was at ESEA LAN last time, is that because you have 5 personalities instead, you can have, say, 2 personalities in a team that will just do whatever they're told. And you can have 2 other that are very, keen on practicing. They're going to be sitting down 8 hours a day practicing, getting ready. And, when they're not in the server, they're on their own server, just running around, learning smokes and flashes and just doing the homework all the time. But then you can have just one person in a team, and it doesn't even have to be someone who doesn't want to show up for practice. You be someone who's a little bit off, maybe a little bit to the side. They just, they'll come up with an excuse every once in a while not to do it, or maybe they just show up, but you can tell on, Mumble or whatever it is that they're not entirely there. They feel a little bit like they'd rather be out with the family barbecuing or something like that. And over time, if you do it every single day and it's the same person, it starts to wear down the team a little bit. And maybe, as you said, maybe it just does demotivate a little bit. So I think, I'm not saying that's the whole reason why Fnatic, fell apart or didn't do that well after Dreamhack Winter. But I think it's important to not think of the team as just a single person, but that, that internal difference between how much people want to put into it. And then you throw in just to bring that back again, you throw in winning $100,000. I think that will mess with some people's motivation. Some people will be more motivated probably, and some people will feel like, all right, now it's time. We can afford to take a little bit of a break. And even if we lose some practice matches, it's all right. We just won $100,000. We're going to be all right. And then by the time you realize it's not really all right anymore, it's too late.
Here's the thing. You're absolutely right there. That's why professional gaming is a job and not just something you do for fun. Okay, if you want to be in the best team, it's a job. And so as a result, if I'm in an office and I'm the guy who's like the office manager, and this guy over here used to be really good at his job, but now he's taking like a few weeks where he's taking liberties, he's coming in late, or he's not doing like extra work I asked him to do, then initially, obviously, I'm just going to give him a chance. Like, I'm going to say, listen, like your work's not quite up to standard. Like, I need you to be at this level, or I'm going to have to take action, And if he doesn't listen, eventually I'm going to have to remove him, because his job affects my job as well, which is like the success of the whole office. Like, I'm going to have to, if he can't do what I need, like turn up on time, do as much work as we need, and then do a good job at the work, those three things, if any of those are missing, eventually I'm going to have to weigh up, like, okay, is he so amazing at what he does do that, like, even someone who can do the other stuff wouldn't match up? If so, I might still keep him. But if he's not, if there's someone who could do those same things, then I'll replace him, right? Because that's business. Now, that's actually where the thing that I was making fun of Fnatic before is a problem, which is that when you build it as like, no, but we're like a family and we're a brotherhood and like we stick together and all this sort of thing, that's the problem. Because in a family, to use the analogy again, you actually would let someone in your family who was fucking up majorly stay in your family. You'd give them way more chances than you'd give anyone else, Like, if someone in your family really did become a drug addict, it's quite unlikely you would immediately just kick them out the house and be like, never come back, we don't want you anymore. Instead, you'd be like, listen, we'll help you with this. Can you turn it around? Like, what's the reasons why? And you'd try and help them like that, okay? But in a scenario of like a pro sports team, then eventually you have to remove someone when they can't perform to the level you want. Or even worse, like when you're describing there, like about not turning up to practice or not wanting to practice, that's like a cardinal sin. Like, in my opinion, the only person who can get away with that is like a super talent. Like, one of the only examples I could give you in CSGO of that is, people always say that Nico from the Western Wolves teams has really bad motivation. Like, he'll have a couple of weeks where he'll be into it, and then he'll have weeks where he doesn't want to practice much. Now, the reason why with Nico you can almost see why it'd be worth gambling on him still is because he's so much better than whoever you'll get for his spot that actually you might still do better even with him than with the player that you replace him with, who will turn up on time, will practice lots. So in that scenario, you can almost make it a case. And even then, if I was an in-game leader, actually, I probably wouldn't gamble on it. I like to have like a certain thing in mind. I like to know, even if I'm not going to be as good as a team, I have like these factors are all in place, and so then I know what I'm working with. Then I know what the upside is and the downside. But the problem with this scenario is like, you should judge people that way, right, Devilwalk? You should judge them if they can perform on their job and if they turn up on time and things.
Yeah. Did we lose Duncan?
No.
All right.
Well, yeah, and it's basically what we've done now. Is trying to make everything work again. I think removing me and Schneider was the right decision to actually fix everything. I might get criticized for doing it, but I'm fine with that.
If you look back now, is there a point, like, say, 2 events ago, where if you'd known that you'd eventually have to make this move and remove at least one person, you could have done it quicker? Like, you could have done it this quicker, and now we'd be like a couple of events ahead of where we are now, instead of having to wait until now and then rebuild. Could this move have been seen in the past?
Could have seen, but it's impossible to know. If
I mean, internally, were you ever thinking about it? Were you ever thinking like, maybe we might have to do this, but we won't this time, or Was there ever even a...
There's actually... I never thought of it, ever. Just after this Dreamhack was when it came up. And yeah, we made the decision. So it was... For me, at least, I never thought of anything like that before I actually saw what I believed to be the destruction of the team.
Anders, when he said that he thought that was the right move to remove those two players, I mean, he still works for Fnatic. He's the coach of Fnatic, so it would be kind of retarded if he said anything else, right? Do you think those were, if you were the general manager of Fnatic and you had all the decision power, are those the two players you'd remove?
The problem is that I'm not in the team. So no, from the outside, no, those wouldn't have been the two players I would have removed. I can say that.
Why not, though?
But that would be discounting all of those things that I was just talking about, like who's motivated to play,
listen,
who fits
Anders,
in the team socially.
I totally agree with what you're saying right now, right? This is what you're saying is very fair. You're adding caveats of things you can't know. But here's the thing that's not fair, is that if we're supposed to use that information, then people have to give us that information. If Fnatic won't tell us who wasn't turning up to practice, who wasn't doing this, and who wasn't good enough, then we can't know that information. Therefore, we can only go on with the information we have. So the information we have, just as outsiders, Anders, who just watch the game, even just looking in the server at them playing in the game, okay? If you'd have looked in the server, these aren't the two players you'd remove?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But that, you know, from the way the Fnatic team is looking right now, it's looking like it was exactly the right move. So, you know, on that sense. But if I had to make the call based on the information that I have, the knowledge I have, I would have made a different call. Yeah.
Well, what would you have done? You're not like Fnatic TV Anders, so can I please know? Maybe he's going to be. Maybe that's the next part of the news.
So based on the little information I had, I think one of the other problems that we haven't really talked about, but maybe we should, is that one of the other things Fnatic did to try and remedy the situation was put everyone in a team house, right?
Because that always works in CSGO, as we've all seen.
Exactly, and I think...
as the French say.
Yeah. I think it's cool that Fnatic wanted to try and do that, but I think it is... Because I spent time in the NIP house as well.
Sure.
With the League of Legends team, admittedly, so you know, and they were great and friendly people and cool. But I got the sense as well that if you want to have a team house that really, really works to actually improve the performance of the team, you need to do more than just put people in a house. There's actually probably a lot of work involved in it, and you know, you need someone who's a manager or a life coach, whatever you want, to help people out with not just, you know, being in their rooms 8-10 hours a day and doing absolutely nothing, because that's a horrible thought. I think when I was 14 or 15, it would have been the best thing in the world, right? What do you feel about moving in with your 4 other friends and you play computer games all day and you get paid for it? Sounds amazing, but when you're actually there, the atmosphere is very different. Even for the League of Legends kids that were, you know, much younger than me and probably did have a good time. I mean, but still, I got a sense every once in a while that maybe it'd be kind of cool as well if they could do something else on their own, and somebody needs to help them with doing that. It's a really big commitment, I think. And I got the sense that some of the people that were most affected by it were actually flusha and JW. From being in that house. So I don't think I could see myself ever removing flusha from the team. I think if I had to go on someone, it would have probably been JW. But you know, from the way people are playing right now, I'm sort of glad that's not the case.
See, what's funny is that you've actually gotten to because I'm going to say now what I would have done if I was the general manager and I didn't have any inside info. Okay, if I was just looking inside the server and I have to pick, like, right, I know who I'm going to recruit. I'm going to recruit these LGB players who are aimers, and I'm going to have to remove someone from my team now. If I was the general manager, the two people who I would consider removing is JW or Schneider. JW, because like I described before, the problem with JW is he's the one who, when I said that thing before about how they don't really have a superstar player, people always say like, but JW could be a superstar player, and that's his style, okay? The others, even though maybe flusha could be a superstar player, he doesn't have to be. He can play a role that isn't a superstar player and still give you almost everything you need from him. Whereas JW in general, you see that, I think sometimes, as weird as it'll sound, I'll give you a football analogy. He's one of the most skilled players in the team, maybe the most skilled, But in football, it doesn't matter if the striker is more skilled than everyone, if he doesn't score enough goals for you to win in your style of play. If he can't score as many goals as you need, it doesn't matter if the guy in midfield isn't as skilled. If he's doing his job and he's setting him up and giving you all the crosses and putting the ball in there, then eventually you have to say, right, well, we need a new striker. So from my perspective, that's why I might have removed JW, because I might think to myself, well, if I put olofm in instead, maybe he can be more of that role that I need. Maybe with the right team, maybe he can be a superstar. So I'd try it like that. Schneider, I think, is a legitimate removal because I think Schneider, unfortunately, has always been a bit overrated in the sense that every time I've ever brought this up to Devilwalk, and I always say, like, okay, I think Flush is pretty good. Like, JW can be pretty good sometimes. He would always tell me, like, no, Schneider, man. Schneider has some of the best aim in the whole world. Right, Devilwalk? This is the speech you'd give me, right?
Yep.
Some of the best aim in the whole world. Incredible aim, man. So sick. I always watch him and I'm in awe of how amazing his aim was. Is this accurate?
Yes, it is.
So you'd put his aim up there with like Forest, Scream. These guys, he's at this level of aiming, right?
Yep.
So here's a problem. If someone can aim really, really well, then they probably should get the most kills because it's easier for them to put the crosshair on the guy's head and press the left mouse button. They should be getting more kills. But if we actually look at the games, Schneider reminds me of nothing from Complexity. His skill level on the rounds that he kills everyone looks incredible, right? Like he can just one-shot 5 people and you're like, wow, it's amazing. But just like Scream isn't a better player than Get Right, despite having better aim, in the same way, Nothing and Schneider aren't better than JW and Swag. Because the difference is those guys actually get the kill. They make their aim change into something in the game, which is a kill, which is what you need. I think that a better way to describe those other players, like Scream and those guys, is not to focus on that they have good aim. Because really, if they're not getting kills, their aim is like aim in an aim map. Or if they were shooting at targets, they'd hit more precisely. Really, it's more that they're flashy. When they do get their kills, they do it in a spectacular fashion. But the people I'm describing here, Swag or Get Right, they get their kills in a way more mundane fashion. They just kill 2 people every round and then they spray this guy in the body, but he's dead anyway. And then they kill this guy in a spray. Like, it doesn't look as flashy, but it has a bigger impact on the game. Am I wrong here, Devilwalk? Come on, you don't fully agree with this, so come on, tell me what you really think, bro.
No, I agree with you. I do. I mean, I think, for example, Flasha is one of those players who doesn't really have that, like, super good aim, but he knows his limits and he knows his capabilities and uses them perfectly in almost every situation. So yeah, I agree. And I think maybe me, I don't have the best aim in the world, but yeah.
The analogy you just did with Jordan with Nothing is actually an interesting one because from what I've heard, just going off of rumors, is that one of the things that's pretty difficult to do with Nothing is actually getting him to take a practice regimen serious for a month, say. And that I don't know if the same is true for Schneider. I got the feeling that Schneider was pretty committed, but it's hard for us to know outside. And that's the same thing. Yeah, having Jordan on your team when he's playing at his very top level will win you a lot of tournaments. But if once you exit the tournament, you're out, and you say, okay, now we've got to put together we've got to practice the next 3 weeks. It's all day, every day. We just got to set it down. Then you need someone who's willing to work that way. Otherwise, what happened to Fnatic will happen to your team. Someone else is going to practice more than you, and they'll show up next time and just be better.
Okay, so that's the key way to set it up, is that it's also a pattern if you think about CS players who have sick aim, that actually in general, a lot of these examples we're giving, Forest, Nothing, these players, part of the reason why they're not consistent with their aim and getting more kills like I'm describing is because it's from talent that their skill is, They can turn up every week with very little practice and potentially do those things. Now, someone like a Get Right or a Flasher or some of these players, they've gotten to that level through a bit of talent. They have some talent, a varying amount, but a lot of hard work and figuring out their skill set, like what can I do and what can't I do, and then just like tunneling my whole game so it's based around what I can do. Like I'm never taking ridiculous risks. Whereas the reason why I've always actually criticized Scream as a player is because what Scream does is take every aim duel and he'll take even the hardest possible shot in the aim duel. Now listen, he can make the shots that people can't, but if I could put Get Right's brain into Scream's body, then it would be like the most unstoppable player ever. Because with GetRight's knowledge of how positioning and what angles to take and when to take a fight and at what distance, with the aim of Scream would be fucking insane. Whereas vice versa, if you put Scream's mind into GetRight's body, I think he'd be fucking terrible. He'd be like just a good player. He wouldn't be one of the best players in the world, like GetRight is, okay, because he would like just rely on his aim. And so just like they just rely on their aim, these players in general, actually, there's a trend that a lot of them aren't as hardcore for the practice, because practice isn't what got them there, you know. They're used to like the luxury of like, oh, I can nocturne and practice and still be good. So actually, I think this is a key thing to bring up, because you shouldn't overhype the potential of players. You should actually look at the performance level they really do bring game in and game out. So the reason why I brought this up actually is not just bash Schneider, because I've just said like, I just think that I would pick, if I had to remove someone, he'd be the one that I would pick, okay, him or JW. And whether I remove JW is actually based on like who I'm getting in return. Like if I'm getting a player who's better at a role I think JW does, then I might remove him. But actually I think JW is good enough that I would remove Schneider, in the sense that I think whoever I get for that role, especially next LGE player, can do his role but better. So part of the reason I bring this up now, though, is that I also wouldn't remove Devilwalk. Because actually, I think when I look at that team, that it's unfair to remove Devilwalk. Because what you're saying there is, okay, Devilwalk's our utility player. His job isn't to, like, in the football analogy, to score goals or to be really flashy with his skills. His job is to do specific tasks within a round, some of which don't even involve shooting people or don't even involve winning an aim duel or peeking first or any of these things. So as a result, Devilwalk can still do all of those things at the moment. Meanwhile, this is the equivalent of, I have two of my strikers, one of them isn't scoring enough. So I remove a defender and add another striker and go, oh, we'll just have three strikers up front. Okay, maybe that could work. It might, as we're seeing now, it might work in Fnatic. Maybe they will be better. But I don't know that the problem in Fnatic was that Devilwalk doesn't do enough fragging. That doesn't make sense to me. Anders, what do you think on this topic?
No, definitely not. And I think but this is one of the hardest things, I think, from an outside point of view, and not to bring this all back to what we know and don't know, but analyzing how a good utility player does his job is very, very difficult. And I think you're right. Devilwalk wouldn't have been one of the people I would have removed from the lineup, but not just because of the utility play, but also because of a personality thing. I think that team needs somebody who is able to calm people down and able to keep people a little bit motivated. Say, right, we may have lost, the first map, but now we got to move on and keep going. So in that sense, actually, if I had to remove Devilwalk, I'm pretty glad that you've ended up in a coach position, because I do think that team needs it. I think one of the reasons, now we didn't talk about this, but, Dreamhack Winter, Khan was there to help out and be the voice of reason and be someone who could calm the team down with a lot of experience.
He was there at Dreamhack Summer too, though.
He was there, but I think
it's weird when he was sat behind then. He wasn't able to like psychically know what rounds to do to win those games versus that team. Yeah,
no, but I actually think Khan was there in a lot less at DreamHack Summer. Just from watching him walk around, I think he's not that he was. I just think he was occupied at other things. That basically, he has a lot of stuff to do for Fnatic at an event like DreamHack. So I just think he showed up like at some games, but I'm pretty sure there were a lot of games where he was off doing other things, and I think that does make a big difference. So if it had to be done, and I guess Fnatic in general felt that it had to be done, I'm sort of happy that you're still in the team in that sense, because I really don't see that team working out well without anyone like that. And I think again this comes back to a little bit to the age involved. I mean, it's once a team breaks down, it's pretty hard to get back on your feet again. And if you don't have a lot of experience doing it, and if you have a lot of emotion going into it, people getting really upset and angry and sad, it doesn't work so well.
Because that's one of the things that actually I think is a bit worrying for me about the Fnatic team now, is that now they're essentially going towards an LGB type team with like looser calling and just a load of fraggers and just try and win using that style. Listen, that can work. It can be an effective style if you have the right players. But actually, one of the things I did like about the old Fnatic team was that they had like a tactical style in mind. And to listen, I'll give you a principle of Counter-Strike that has always held true. The more tactics you try to implement in the game, like prepared tactics, the more you need role players. Because the star players can't do every aspect of the tactic. They do one key part, but you need someone else who can link up what they're doing to the rest of the players in the team and make it all like mesh together. And in general, those are cerebral players. Those are players who've had to think about their game more. And usually, unfortunately, they're the players who are less skilled. So actually, the more tactics you want, the more role players you need. Now, the looser the tactics are, the more mad aimers you can have, because obviously it's up to them some of what they're doing in a round. So actually, it's kind of a big gamble here that Fnatic's like reinventing their whole style of play. Like, you can't do the old school style. I mean, were any of these discussions even a part of like how the team came to this decision, Devilwalk?
I think KRiMZ. I think both KRiMZ and olofm actually can do a lot of type of roles. I know they're a hardworking group of people, but I also think that it's much easier to start off kind of having this all-star lineup and kind of progressively give these roles I had to the players and kind of build them up to kind of becoming role players.
Okay, so when you listen, I think we've got a miscommunication here. I think when I say role player, when Devilwalk says role player, maybe we mean something else. So when he says a statement like, "I think olofm can do a lot of roles." Okay, so I mean he can.
I know.
He can frag a lot. He can wreck kids. He can tell people to sit the fuck down. He can shoot faces. He can rip domes. He can spam that dig. He can hit the op shot. Like what roles are we talking about here?
No, I understand that doing the boring jobs like just holding an angle to keep map control and flashing and creating openings for your star players is what a role player does. Sure.
Okay, olofm can't do that. I'm just telling you that right now. Am I wrong?
I think you can, and I think Pronax will have much more responsibility of actually being more of a role player than he did before, and also think KRiMZ will have an important aspect in the role playing. You want something?
Yeah. So what I think is the strength of having Pronax in the team. To me, it feels like I wish I had more time to listen into the comms going on, because we'd learn a lot from that. But it seems to me that the strength of Pronax as an in-game leader is actually his mid-round calling, and I think you can actually win almost all Counter-Strike matches by having really, really good mid-round calling. The only time
I mean, fnatic has essentially shown that you can't. But okay, keep going.
No, I think you can. I think if you have a team that's good enough at doing that,
that's it. You need a team that's good enough as well. You can't just make the call.
No, that's true.
You can tell someone to go to B, but if they get killed there, it doesn't really help.
No, that's true. That's true. But once you get into a 2-on-3 or 2-on-2 or something like that situation, 3-on-3 situation, and you need to make up your mind, are we going to go to the A or the B bomb site? And somebody has to try and, take all the information they have about the other team, all the information you have about this particular round, and what you know about the players you're up against. You have to make a decision. You say, have they rotated everyone to one or the other bomb site, or which one is the weakest one? And then you tell your team to go. Then I think you can. That's what we've seen from fnatic in the past. I think is that once that really works, and they have the skills. I think that was why I said I think that the previous lineup could have worked as well. Is that once that kind of calling really worked, there was no issue, I think. And then, the strats that you're talking about with having people play roles and having a set amount of strategies, that's all cool. But I think if you overreach with that kind of approach, then unless you're existence or somebody else, it becomes really tricky. And when it falls apart, it doesn't just fall apart a little bit, it just crashes completely. Whereas if you stick to the playing from the middle of the round and just, securing yourself some sort of opening and then playing from that opening, I think there's a lot more chance you can come back even from a position where you're in a 2-on-3. If you make the right calls, you will still win the round, probably.
That's the thing, Anders. If I summed up all of my criticisms of fnatic and then my solution to the problem, if you add up all my opinions so far, it essentially goes like this. When they won Dreamhack Winter, I didn't think they were a bad team. I just thought they're not at the level of winning Dreamhack Winter. They did it once, but they won't do it next time. And they didn't. And the reason why I thought is quite simple. Skill-wise, they don't match up as well as the teams that are ahead of them. Tactics-wise, they have a system, but it's not necessarily as effective as VeryGames' system is, or NiP's system is, at least at that time. And then you go down to, like, team play. Okay, team play I actually think is one of the few areas where they actually were level with the others. So the problem there is, of the three collectors, they've only got one where they're sort of level with the others, and the other teams ahead of them in the rankings are going to be ahead in at least one of those other two aspects, if not both. So for me, the simplest fix, without knowing what's going on within the team, is to fix one of those two qualities. I either have to improve the tactics, which means get a different tactics leader, or change tactical style. And that's actually really hard to do. Like, there's very few tactical leaders out there. And usually once you have one, and if it works at any level, you want to stick with that. So to me, the simplest fix is make the team more skilled. Now, when I look at the team like I described before, the style of fnatic works because of having people like Schneider, Flusher, Devilwalk, who don't have to be star players. They can do their job and it can be good enough. that's why to me the simplest fix actually is replace JW and get in an olofm or get in a Dennis. This is depending on when we do the move, obviously, because these sorts of player I can keep the whole system the same, what we've already got that's working, and I can try and just improve a little bit by adding something in over here. So to me that makes sense. Now the way they've done it now is they've gone more extreme, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that can't work. It's just that I think it's way more uncertain as it will. Like because you're changing more, there's a lot more uncertainty in more areas. Like, will this player be able to play in this new role that we're giving him that he didn't have before? Will the tactical style work with a totally different set of players? What happens? Okay, let's say in my world, I'm describing that I don't think JW is quite at the level of being the superstar. Remember, when I say this, we're not saying he's not good. We're saying that when he plays and is a superstar, he has to only be compared to Shocks, to Get Right, to Guardian, to Pasha. He can only, because these are the people that they're losing to in the matches that don't let them go further. So when he's playing, in the same way as we don't say, if Messi has a bunch of games where he doesn't score any goals, we don't say, yeah, but he's better than Fernando Torres. We say, no, but Ronaldo is outperforming him. Because for him to win, he probably has to outperform or be at the level of Ronaldo within his context of his team, right? So the point here is, that's why I make the example of this player not being in that position. Like, does anyone have any counters to this or something they want to say in this topic?
I just want to say that removing one player is just basically not really a big change at all.
Right, you're going to have to unpack that for me, for the love of God. Please unpack that statement. What do you mean it's not that big a deal?
I think it's much easier to actually... But our problem wasn't really having the players. It was more of our... We couldn't really fit into a style where we were comfortable and we couldn't really find ourselves back again.
Okay, I've made a mistake here. I actually wanted to bring this point up before, and I think here's the mistake I've made. I transitioned this discussion from what was wrong with Fnatic for real, Devilwalk, tell us the secret stuff from behind the scenes, to now let's analyse Fnatic in-game who weren't winning and see why in-game they weren't winning and look at reasons they're okay. And so the problem is, Anders and Devilwalk keep bringing me back to the other thing of like, or maybe someone wasn't practicing. Whereas here's what I haven't said, essentially, in loud enough terms, as in like I haven't made this very clear. It's that even if you were practicing fully Devilwalk and everyone had turned up and everyone was totally into it, I don't think Fnatic as a team was good enough to be consistently at the level of NiP, Virtus Pro, Titan. I think you were always a step behind anyway. So even though, so I'll even put it like this. I think that's why the problems occurred in the team. Because when you're losing and then you have to practice even more, that's why you're not motivated to practice more, because you're losing already and you go into the game and you don't win, and then this person's role doesn't work quite how it should, and we practice this, why didn't we do it in game? That makes you even more demotivated. You can't then go, no, but the reason we lost is because we're demotivated. No, that's the last step. What made you demotivated? If you're winning and you're doing awesome in game and everything's working really well, you don't become demotivated. You become demotivated when things aren't working, you get frustrated, you don't know what the solution is, and then because you don't have a solution, you try the same thing again and it doesn't work, and now, that doesn't work, and like, what's the solution? Well, I mean, I guess we could kick someone, but I don't want to kick someone. Like, they're all my friends, I want to stick with them, I want to try again. Like, maybe we can just shift this guy's role around a little bit. Flashy, you do this instead. Like, does that work? Okay, it worked a little bit, but not entirely. Now we're going to have another problem. Like, do we kick this? I don't want to kick someone. You see, this is really what goes on here, but you can analyze it that way, or you can just look in the server and say, what could you do differently in the server? So either go back to you again, Devilwalk, from either of those two perspectives. Start answering again, but just give me it from one of those two.
I mean, I do believe it's more personality wise that this team will work better. I think we'll have a tighter group, more hardworking group, and I just generally believe 100% that this team will be better.
So it's totally irrelevant that olofm is a way better fragger than Schneider?
No,
that's not even going to have an impact on the game.
Obviously it has, but I also think that with all the problems we had, it's going to be way, way easier for him to work and become better within the team as well.
No, that's what I agree with. That's the point I've been making, is that even though no one's admitted it, we've sort of come, like, it's pretty obvious to anyone who can read behind the lines of what's been said on this show so far, that some players who were removed, don't know who they could be, maybe didn't want to practice that much, or maybe their personality no longer meshed with the team. Therefore, regardless of all CS reasons, to try someone new could help immediately there, because maybe the new person is really eager to fit in, or maybe the new person, we already know his personality is going to be a better mesh. So that's actually an immediate fix you can do there. I'm just saying, let's not be silly and pretend like the in-game stuff doesn't know you're doing. Like when you said that comment, like, well, removing one player doesn't really do much. Okay, NiP, sorry guys, but I've just removed Get Right from your lineup, and you have to have Makalele now. Good luck. You'll probably be the same. Just keep playing.
As you said before, I mean, we didn't really have a star player, so
yeah,
it would make less difference on our team than
no.
NIP.
I agree. Yeah, I'm just saying as a broad statement. It's kind of a crazy statement. Say just removing one player, right? Anders, you want to jump in with something here?
Well, I just thought, I mean, obviously, I think I definitely don't want to contest the idea that there is such a thing as a star player that you can put in your team and have them, get a lot of frags in a game and everything like that. But it doesn't work very well unless you have, the rest of the team to help out. And I guess in that sense, I think Fnatic are still in a pretty good spot, but I thought they were maybe in a slightly better spot having Devilwalk be the, one of the guys to help out with some of that stuff. I think one of the most startling examples we've seen of this recently is Shoxy moving on to play for Epsilon now, but for the, the Clan Mystic lineup. And the incredible difference between watching Shoxy play in Titan and be a guy who on some days looked even better than Get Right or Forest, and then now when you saw him play, I mean, in Epsilon, looked very different. I mean, I'm just a completely different Shoxy, and I'll give him a lot of room to be worse for just saying, all right, he's just come from one team to the next. He's got to figure out how to play with a new team and all that stuff. But
sure, yeah.
Yeah, but even then, I still feel like some of the shots that we saw Shoxy take in that game were very, very far from his own level. And I don't think that's just because, it's not just about where you point your mouse and click. It's also about getting into the right position. It's about the rest of your team causing enough of a distraction that the enemies are focused on, something different. And I think all of those things combine into one thing. So I have no doubt that olofmeister can hit the shots if his team works for him. What's interesting is that whether or not the rest of the Fnatic team is going to be able to put olofmeister in a position, because if you have a star player, that's what you want, right? If you have Get Right on your team, you don't want Get Right to be the guy who just who does all the work and then you try and leave someone else to frag. You want everyone else to sacrifice themselves if that's what's needed to put Get Right in a position where he can kill 3 or 4 people, and then he will do it. And probably olofmeister will too. So that I think that's going forward, that might be what it comes down to for Fnatic. Then my question is, who's going to be taking over your role, Devilwalk? Is that going to be KRiMZ then?
I think it's actually right now. It's I think it's going to be mostly KRiMZ, but there's a bit of a change in the system of how we actually play the game compared to before. Obviously, I don't want to spoil too much, but it still has the same line as before, but it's different in some aspects of actually how to progress in the map, and how you work the map is quite different.
Okay, so I think that's enough on the Fnatic topic in general. We've gone pretty deep on that. So before we'll do the ESL One topic last. So now I just want to do a brief discussion about ESEA, because let's just start at the top of the rankings. Okay, iBuyPower won the event. It was actually very, very easy and accurate, by the way, to look at the last event and say, well, there was only one European team. The European team themselves seemed like they didn't really take the final like 100% seriously. In fact, like I even mentioned it, I think I mentioned this in an article, that I even heard from someone that one of the players in Titan in the grand final had like MP3s playing in his headphones for the first best of 3, and it wasn't until they lost that then he was like, right, well, I better actually fucking play like I normally would in a real match. Because the whole thing is, think of the context. In the upper bracket game when they'd played iBuyPower at that ESEA 15, they smashed them completely on 2 of the maps. So they're thinking, well, we're already in the final. We only have to win 1 best of 3. Like, we're going to cruise to this no matter what. And it's not until they've lost the first one that then they're like, right, we have to play properly now. And then in the second one, it's not like they got dominated there. They lost a narrow game. Okay, so iBuyPower wins. Listen, that's still legit. The second best of 3 is pretty legit. They beat this one team. Okay, that's all fine. But this event, on paper, before we know anything about the event, looks like, well, there's no way iBuyPower can win because, there's Na'Vi, there's Virtus.pro, there's NiP, and these are, in theory, the 3 best European teams at the moment. Now, we might go into this, but obviously there's factors for a couple of those teams as to why they weren't at that level. Overall, how do we assess iBuyPower winning the event, Anders? Like,
overall, I don't know. I think it just turns out that the whatever kind of conflict there was between the complexity lineup and the iBuyPower lineup, switching out anger and swag and all that stuff, obviously worked out a lot better for iBuyPower than it did for complexity. So I think that's the first thing, because previously complexity was without a doubt the best team in the US, and
only when they were overseas though.
Well, yeah, maybe, but even then, I would say on LAN they were just generally better than iBuyPower.
Yeah, but iBuyPower used to beat them in NA. iBuyPower used to be the best team, and then overseas, Cole was the best team, right?
Yeah, but I would have still said overall, I would have.
No,
still
I agree,
more.
But I mean that was like the way it went down before. Okay, and so now, iBuyPower upgraded their roster. They took a better player from Cole, and they've added something to their lineup. Not only that, they added a role they didn't have, which is like a really good lurker, whereas before they had just a load of aimers. So I mean, if you okay, let me put it this way. You know the way I broke down ESEA Season 15 there? The only people I think who wouldn't agree with that is people who are like die-hard NA fans who don't want to believe that like there was any factors aside from iBuyPower being godlike that made them win that LAN. They don't want to believe that maybe Titan didn't take it 100% seriously in the final. They don't want to believe someone had MP3s on. They don't want to believe that the fact that only one NA team went, EU team went, and it was the one that actually ever even had a history of losing to NA teams. They don't want to believe any of that was a factor, okay? So if I come to this LAN and I add in factors like Edward didn't turn up until the last day and it was too late. Bialy, I think it was the guy who had Snacks had to play like the same day he got off the plane. For those two teams at least, it does take a little bit away from winning the LAN, right? It wasn't the same as Virtus Pro and Navi at full power.
Yeah, I guess there is some truth to that, but I think it's at the same time, obviously those are really real facts. Edward not making it's obviously a really big deal for Navi. Even though I was impressed by Senia playing in general, I thought he would have been completely trash. But yeah, he actually did play all right, which was impressive. And then Snack, having that incredible delay and just showing up at the last minute to play basically is obviously unfortunate, but. Then if you go back and if you look, what I'm saying is that I think it's hard to find a LAN where some team doesn't have something that goes wrong. Like it's really hard to have a completely perfect LAN. I guess it is unfortunate for the European fans that it was two of the top European teams that went there. But then what about NIP?
No, listen, that's why I wanted to set it up so it's a balanced debate. So we go through the points point by point here, because the point is the NIP result. There's no excuse for NIP not being as good enough. NIP went at full strength with all their team, and in theory just played like they have at every other ESEA event, and they've won all the rest, remember? And so the wins over NIP are all 100% legit, and so as a result, for example, Cole beating them, that's like a really impressive result. Like, no one would have expected that. And NIP not placing top actually does give some credence to the fact that iBuyPower winning the event's better than the ESEA 15 one before. With that said though, Anders, I'm going to pull you up on what you said there. Because you're absolutely right that at almost every LAN, something will go wrong for a number of the teams, right? Yeah. First of all, we can't just put it like some things are all equal. So this thing going wrong for this team is identical to this thing going wrong for this other team, okay? So it's one thing if like your mouse doesn't work whatsoever. It's another thing if like 5 players at the event didn't get enough sleep the night before and they got 4 hours sleep instead of 6, okay? One of those is more manageable than the other. One is really bad if the mouse doesn't work. The other one, okay, it'll affect you, but if you're a really elite level player, you can find a way around it, okay? You can still play like 80% of your level and maybe still win the game. The reason why I say that is because this is exactly one of the problems of people discussing like how legit the win was, because I'm not one of these people who's like bullshit like, oh, it doesn't count because it's in NA and Edward wasn't there. No, it still counts. It just doesn't count like to the same degree it would if Edward had been there and if Snacks had been there. So you get credit, you just don't get like 100% credit. You get let's say 90% credit. Yeah. So for example, in my mind, iBuyPower went up in the rankings there. But I'll give you an example, okay? People said this logic that doesn't work. They said, okay, why are European fans crying now? Because, when NA teams go to Europe, they have, like, jet lag and they have to get there. Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. Which member of Cole's family died and made them have to fly in and play on the day of the event? No, wait a minute. Which member of iBuyPower didn't actually turn up until after they'd been knocked out of EMS1 and they had to use some old guy who was retired from 6 months? Oh, yeah, that's never happened, does it? Those are pretty extreme examples, Listen, jet lag's a factor and all these things. That's absolutely legit, but you can't go crazy and make that's like a false equivalency.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I also want to point out that every European event the American teams have gone to, haven't they boot camped for like 2 weeks before in Europe?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Cold Bootcamp, but I know like the iBuyPower team have done it before. Definitely Dreamhack Winter, and possibly they went a couple of days early to Poland. Yeah, that could be true.
And they will be for the next for the Gfinity LAN as well. They're going to be there.
Yeah, they will bootcamp a week before that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be the big test for iBuyPower, then, isn't it? I mean, we will have to see exactly how well they do. But I think there is. I mean, maybe you can help us out with this, Devilwalk, because that's been the theory for a while in Counter-Strike now. Just the idea that the home teams tend to do better, right? We have EMS, we have Dreamhack Winter, we have ESEA LAN. I mean, can you try and help us out with that? Because I think that seems like a strange thing. I'm wondering if that will affect iBuyPower when they come to the UK next time to play.
I think it's a lot easier. I don't know what it is, but you kind of get that honorly like motivation. Just you want to win on your ground, kind of thing, which just keeps you pumped up and it's mysterious in a way. But for ESL, I'm not sure if I'm gonna mention a German team winning, but I mean they could probably Mousesports with Aloe could probably do some damage, but just because Aloe is a great player. But do
you want to hear a theory?
Go on.
I think the real problem with that conundrum that you just raised there, that it's a home team who wins these events, is that you just leave it there and you just go, right, the team who won technically was from Sweden, this team was from Ukraine, this team was from America. You don't look at the other results. That's the problem. So I would put it like this. Teams who are like, teams who are the home team, who aren't one of the best in the world, tend to get a little boost from being at home. For whatever reason that is. They were inexperienced, or now they don't have to travel to the event and they don't have jet lag, all those factors. So it makes teams who aren't the absolute best a little bit better. And sometimes maybe they can have a fluke tournament where they go way better. But even so, if you look at the rest of the rankings, well, you could play the next tournament on the fucking moon and Nip still comes second. Like that doesn't really matter. And here's a factor that will even play into that. So it's not just, you're going to think to yourself, okay, let me ask you a quick question. Which is the one event this year where the home team didn't win?
Copenhagen Games.
Yeah, that's the perfect example. Because remember the analogy that I gave there of who it affects, the home aspect. It affects the teams who aren't quite the best team, but they're good enough, like they have the skill, but then maybe normally they don't get that. Now at home, usually they do a bit better, right? Think about this. Yeah. At EMS, they played NIP in the semi-final, and they got utterly crushed by NIP in Poland, right? At Copenhagen Games, they played NIP in the semi-final. They lost 2-0 again, but this time it was super close. This time Inferno was like overtime, and then the other game was like overtime as well. Now, they still lost, but it was really close. So actually, like, the theory even worked out at the one event where the home team didn't win. Like, that's why I think, obviously Devilwalk brought up the point there that even anyone who claims they really believe that theory, no one's like, so I guess German team's going to win the one in Cologne. Like, nobody in the world thinks that. So obviously we don't really believe it. It's just a correlation that we've noticed so far. But I think it's a decent factor. But this leads me to another point here, which is the one factor that you could have said was even if NIP didn't win, they always finished second no matter where it was. Now ESEA was the one event ever where they didn't even finish top 4. Is that significant in some way, Devilwalk?
I mean, we could give them a break for actually, how many tournaments was it in a row they finished top 4?
Something like 22 or something ridiculous. No, 30 I think it was or something, Yeah, so I mean, we could give them a break for actually finishing 5th in a tournament. That's what they did in ESA, right? Sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't put any like weight into their result there. I mean, there's also things like they were after the LAN, everyone was going on vacation just after it. So it was like kind of their last tournament before this month vacation. They were looking forward so much. I don't know if that factors in, but I wouldn't put too much weight in them actually finishing one place below that top 4 spot they've done for 30-ish plus tournaments in a row. I think they're still going to be there, obviously.
I think there was a different factor as well going on for the teams that actually play Complexity, which is that I think Complexity as a team felt like they were falling apart, right in the middle of the LAN. Basically, I felt that I think the team was already, we've heard about like all the different potential roster changes, and I think they all knew that was coming. So I think the team probably played a lot more like a mixed team. I think they had all the stress off them. I think nobody expected Complexity to do anything but finish last of that event. Well, maybe above Overgaming, maybe above the Spanish team. But to be honest, even that would have been a question mark in my mind going into the tournament. So then, you know, you're NIP, you come in and suddenly you play a team that has no care, no fears, no expectations from themselves. And it is, I think it may be hard to understand exactly how that works, but I think from a competitive point of view, it is a lot different playing a team like that, especially when they have someone like Nothing on the team. And Nothing is a guy that he plays in that style, right? You let him lose and give him absolutely no boundaries. And there's no repercussions. If you let, like, normally if you're in a game and you want to win a major tournament and you set Jordan loose and he does something insane, everyone is going to be angry, right? Jordan, why did you storm the yard on your own? You got killed. Now we're a man down. In this tournament, it doesn't matter, right? Complexity, if they win, and it just happens to work, right? So I think, not to put everything on that, but I think actually Complexity having almost no restraints in that tournament helped them out a lot.
So let's put our money where our mouth is here. So we're giving iBioPower credit, but
yeah,
in the next major tournament, ESL One. Now, obviously, for a moment, I want you to forget about the new maps and all that, because that's like an extra variable that could really change how things go. So let's imagine that wasn't there for the moment. Let's imagine it was like the old majors. Yeah. If you had to predict now, where does your sense tell you that iBioPower would finish? What ranking would you give them at the end of the tournament?
Quarterfinalist.
Anders, what do you think?
That's a really, I mean, because I think the tournaments have been so dependent on how the brackets turn out, it's very, very hard to make that prediction. But yeah, I agree. I think they could end up in the quarterfinals.
See, I actually thought you guys were going to be like political and say they were going to like, oh, they could win if they were on a good day or something. So I was actually going to say round of 8. So now it sounds like I'm agreeing, whereas actually that was going to be the controversial opinion. So no, I think that's fair. Because, listen, they didn't make out the group last time, but they've got a different team now. They've changed a few players. They've actually got some legit wins from this ESEA LAN. So to me, okay, they can get out the group. I think it would be silly to say they won't get out the group. That should be expected. But then once you get to the round of 8, now you have to start thinking, well, who are you going to beat in the round of 8, Because very likely you're going to play someone like LDLC or Dignitas or Hellraisers. These are the teams now you're going to have to beat. So now I look at a lot of those teams and I say, like, I have to favour most of those teams. Like, listen, I think they could beat an LDLC or something like that, or Epsilon or whatever, but I don't think they're going to beat the Hellraisers. I think Dignitas will probably beat them. So, to me, they're absolute max. If everything goes amazingly and they play awesome, maybe they could make a semi-final. Maybe they get the right draw. Maybe they have one awesome best of 3. But if I had to actually put my money down, I'd say 5th to 8th is like where they should be.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that works against them in this point as well, is that when you win 2 ESEA LANs in a row, all of a sudden on all the European teams' radar, I think if you're a European team before the last ESEA LAN and you had to sit down and make a list, prioritize who are we going to try and figure out who to beat, iBioPower would have been very far down the list, and now I'm pretty sure they're much higher on the list, and everyone has to have at least a look at what is Days doing with this team, how exactly do they play, and that makes it automatically much more difficult for iBioPower to actually do something.
I think that's a very, very good point. That, I mean, it's as I've said before, like it's easier to get to the top than actually staying there. Once people recognize you are there or on your way there, people will start to like kind of put a leg in front of you and try to make you fall down. They will know your tactics. They will have seen this, and they would probably have been impressed by the results. But at the same time, they would want to be cautious. So this win could actually, like iBioPower showing how strong they are, could actually be like bad for them in a sense that people actually were ready for it.
See, this is an example, right, of where two people use different words but are saying the same thing. So me and Devilwalk absolutely agree on this point here, right? Which is that it's not that the team is bad and that they got lucky and they won. They do, in a sense, they get lucky, because what happens is when you're not on the radar as like Nip's team, where they've spent 2 weeks looking at you, then things can surprise them that you do, because they don't know your tendencies as much. They know a little bit, but they haven't fully focused, okay? So the point is, your style at the time, whether you're fnatic at Dreamhack Winter or whether you're this team now, iBioPower at this LAN, is primed to be as effective as it can ever be at any point in history. And unfortunately, if it works really well now, the better it works now, the less it will work in future. Because since it worked so well now those teams will put in full effort to breaking down that style. And it's not that it won't work as well. And now they'll have answers to it that they didn't have before. And so in the same way as, to me, that's why a Fnatic wasn't going to win the next event. They weren't going to win the EMS and they weren't going to win Copenhagen Games. It's because of that. It's like people now had more of a factor on it. So I actually think it's even worse for iBuyPower than this Fnatic example I'm giving of. Because at least Fnatic had like a system in place where even if it's less effective, it could still work in some scenarios. Like I could see them winning a best of 3 over this team. The problem I see for the iBuyPower team is that these 2 ESEA championships they've won, admittedly with different players, have been really run and gun style of Counter-Strike. And that style of play doesn't work consistently and in the long run. That works on games where everyone is going nuts with their shots, or it works where you just have like some super hot streak of like knowing which site to switch to in the middle of the round or where to just rush here. In a big semi-final against like a team like a NiP or even like Virtus Pro or someone, that's where you're going to have those rounds where like you're not hitting your shots, and we went to B 4 times and that didn't work, and when we tried to walk in away we got immediately killed. So like, what do we do now? And like that's where the game grinds to a halt, and you have to have like real strategy and you have to have real positions for people. You can't just run and gun and then every round he goes here, oh now he goes here instead, a different position. You have to have that set stuff that you can fall back on. Because that's
exactly.
That's
Plan B is needed with that actual like strategy or gameplay. You have to have Plan Bs. Like so many Plan Bs that isn't your most effective way, but would kind of work against a certain style or be more effective when you've actually been locked into that casual Counter-Strike not working. So I definitely agree with you on that one, Thorin.
So Anders needs to go at some point. You got a point to say here?
No, I was just going to say that what's even worse for iBuyPower when we're talking about all of this is the fact that they're going to be playing at the Gfinity Land before they play at Gamescom, so they have one more tournament for people to figure them out at. But it's obviously still going to be interesting to see if they can play well against the European teams at that tournament. But it just means that if they do, then they will be very high on the list probably for teams to try and, we can call it anti-stratting if you want, but at least try and figure out.
So when we go into this ESL One topic now, at some point Anders has to go. So if you have to go at some point, just tell us and you can hop off and we'll just finish up. But I'll start the topic now so we can get some opinions from you. So I'm going to write an article about this. So I'm not going to go like insanely in depth on like maps and all that sort of shit. But I want to get like initial topics and we'll discuss from there. So the first news that we heard, I think that we should separate it into different points. Okay. So the first point should just be like this. Does Counter-Strike need new maps? Notice I didn't say does Counter-Strike need Cobble and Overpass. I just said does it need new maps? Anders, does it need new maps?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think the game will be a lot more interesting if we have a bigger map pool. I think the map picking process is very important and we don't put nearly enough emphasis on it. I think the audience will enjoy it a lot more if there were more maps and if part of defeating your opponent also involved picking good maps against them.
Okay, so when you said that there, you're actually not saying it not only needs new maps, it needs a bigger map pool as well, yeah?
Yes.
So we can't just remove 2 maps and put 2 new maps and have a 5 map pool still.
No, I think 7 maps is good. I've talked to a lot of people who even argue for a 9 map, but I think 7 is good. And then I think in a year we can start looking at 9 maps if that even is relevant. But I would say 7, yes.
Okay, Devilwalk, what do you think on this? Does it need new maps and does it need a bigger map pool?
I think for the actual game to survive, like to extend the period of survival for Counter-Strike, I do believe that more maps or new maps is very important. And I'm not a big fan of the new maps, but I do agree that 7 map pool is probably favorable in this scenario.
Because here's one of the things that annoys me about this topic is that people don't break it down like that. They just approach the whole news of all of it and they give one opinion that fits it all and doesn't really answer all different points. So, for example, people wouldn't guess this, but I actually think Counter-Strike does need new maps and I think it needs more maps. It needs a bigger map pool for 2 reasons. One, some of the maps that are standard maps right now aren't very good. Well, first of all, thanks Valve, we had some fixed maps that were actually way better, like Mirage. We had a better version of Train. So guess what? No one wants to play Train and Mirage anymore. Well, gee, thanks for throwing out the good versions of those. Cheers. So that's like one thing you could say already that Valve could have fixed themselves today. It's not like these maps don't exist, the good maps. They do. You won't let us play them. And then
I do actually think Train was more popular with the old map. even.
No, a lot more teams were willing to play it. Dude, NiP were the best on the old train. NiP don't even want to play the new train. That's like enough said on that one, you know.
It's actually very, very different than the old train.
Same as Very Games were awesome on the old Mirage. Well, on the new Mirage, it's a fucking nightmare when they play that map. It's like, there's clearly a problem with that. The reason I bring that up is because, if we're going to be honest, the debate obviously isn't like, oh, well, we need new maps, but there aren't any new maps. Well, no, there are maps, but you won't let us play them. So you've added your own restriction in there, Valve, before we can have an actual debate over which maps we use.
Yeah.
So then this comes into the topic of the map pool being bigger. I actually agree also that the map pool should be like 7 maps. Like I've said before, I would have just kept like the old SE maps, the 5, and then I would have put in Cash and I would have put in Tuscan. Or maybe if not Tuscan, put in Season.
Yes.
Or if not Season, you know, you can get another map that's good still. It doesn't have to be Overpass and Cobble. My point here is, as a general point, having a bigger map pool is good. And I'll tell you why. Because what Anders was saying there, you can actually change the map pick system. I've only said this on Twitter, I think, but I think Libba's put in an article somewhere. There's actually a map pick system, which is awesome for Counter-Strike, which is instead of banning everything first, you put 7 maps in, but then what happens is you each ban one, then you each pick one, then you each ban one, then there's the 3rd map.
More like Dota.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing there, is that because you're banning first, there's still the element of like, you can pick one map that you definitely don't want to play. This is our weakest map, we're going to throw that out. But because you don't ban second, you can't then throw out your weakest map and then their strongest map. You have to make a choice. Do you want to throw out their strongest map? You can do that. But that means you can't throw out your weakest map, and they can pick it next. So there's gamesmanship there. Now, if you're the best team in the world, like a NiP, you can really exploit this system, and you can really get an edge on teams that don't want to play a map. Like if Hellraisers don't want to play on Nuke or whatever it is, well, Train I think is the one they don't play. You can exploit that against them, which they should be punished for not wanting to play that. You know, they have to give something up if they want something in return. Now, this system's awesome, and crucially, it also means that like, you don't get into those weird scenarios that you do in best of win 5 map pools, where everyone agrees to ban the maps that we're all good and bad on, and we all just play like a shitty series on the 3 maps in the middle, where it's like, we just don't mind playing it. And that's not the best Counter-Strike, because one of the key things, like you're saying about Dota, is that if I do spend bans and I want to take something away from you, you can still pick something else that you're amazing on. That's the key. That's a point I don't understand why tournament organizers don't get. If someone is the best in the world on Train, why would I want to design a system where they never play Train? So if Roger Federer is the best in the world on grass, this is an example, he's not in real life, but say he was the best player on grass, and somehow you could just ban grass every time, well, now we never get to see the best player ever play on that one surface. That would be fucking retarded. We want to see the best player play on the best surface. Now he won't every time in my map system, because sometimes you can ban it. But if you're the team who's weak on something, you'd rather ban the thing you're really weak on. You won't always spend it on the strong thing, you know.
It also adds another, you know, it adds a new level when you're actually watching tournaments as well. Because let's say both Virtus Pro and Na'Vi are very good. Like their best map is Mirage. Let's say that's the case. I mean, it almost is, right? So then NIP is playing either of these two teams. Well, what if NIP decide to ban out Mirage against not one but not the other? All of a sudden, we know a lot more about how NIP think about their opponents, and all these things are very, very interesting to get into. And it's something that, you know, should be involved in you know, the pre-game talk of any tournament. It's just, you know, how does this whole thing work? And it would be a lot more transparent, a lot more obvious if we had a 7-map map pool and the system that you and Lopez have been talking about. So yes, I definitely agree.
And I also want to point out that it also makes best of 3, like almost every best of 3, if you pick like us against NIP, is always going to have the same 3 maps every BO3. Like all the time. You cannot change that like system because of the banning phase. Like NIP can make you play the same maps, or we can make NIP play the same maps we've always done. We always played Inferno, Dust 2, and Train against NIP. The last 15 BO3s we played them, and it gets boring because some teams, for example, Dignitas is always going to have a hard time against NIP because they cannot change out the maps.
Especially because their best maps that they want to play on are the ones NiP is better on and wants to play on as well.
Yeah.
So that makes like some teams have a real struggle against some teams. That's why we see those things like, oh, Dignitas is shit against NIP. But if they played a couple of different maps, this could all change.
Okay, so then the second question becomes, should this map pool, not ignore the time factor now, should this map pool of our 7 maps that we want include Cobble and Overpass, Devilwalk?
No.
Why not?
I haven't even played them. Like, I have no opinion. I don't even think my players have an opinion, and that's the problem. Like, you have to actually know the maps to put them in competitive play. I understand that people think that we gamers are very negative. You know, people think we're like, oh, you're so lazy, can't practice like 2 new maps in a map pool. But it's not about that. It's, you know, it takes time to even practice a map you've played for 10 years on straight, like publicly, casually, even professionally at times. Even change your game style or develop it. So I mean, just 1 month before, it's yeah. I mean, I guess that's another thing as well.
Anders?
All right, so I've been playing in matchmaking, and this is a crucial point to make. Matchmaking is absolutely nothing like playing in a competitive game. So let's not make that, you know, let's not make that mistake. But to try it out, I had to do something right. So I played in matchmaking with various people, some from Copenhagen Wolves, some from Dignitas, some other players too, and initially, I was very upset. I thought this is the worst thing that I've ever tried in my life. It's, you know, there's a reason why people stop playing Cobble, and this version of Cobble is arguably worse because there's a lot more weird corners that people can hide in. You can't actually walk anywhere without checking every single corner all the time, so it's very confusing. But then I've actually spent a long time just flying around the maps in third-person view and trying to look at everything. And, you know, even though it's hard for me, Thorin, I've tried to stay as positive as I can about this, and I'd say I think actually there are 2 really big problems that I've come up with. First of all is the B bomb side on Cobble. I think is so big and it's impossible to check everything. You actually just cannot. I think there are way too many places for people to hide. Just to take an example, let's say on Dust 2, somebody's hiding in the B bomb site, doesn't matter what team they're on, and you have to make a call. Let's say you spotted them and you have to make a quick call to your teammate. So you say, okay, he's in the back plateau behind the back box, or he's on the plateau, but he's by the headshot box, and he's walking around the left, the right side, whatever it is. You can very quickly, very concisely tell your teammate where someone is, where you saw them, and give them that information, and you know, they can make a move afterwards. But on the B bomb side on Cobblestone, I have no idea how anyone would ever say anything. It'd be, you know, he's behind the 3rd tree on your left, but then he's actually in this very tiny corner, and you just can't make that call quick enough. You'll be dead before you actually get done pronouncing that sentence. So I think that B bomb site is in itself very, very complicated. The other thing is, in my mind, I think that if you had to have like the ultimate Counter-Strike competition, do you remember this command that was called DL max size in 1.6?
Yeah.
Where you could turn all the white.
Well,
no, actually, all the walls. There were some of the textures. You could like turn all the walls essentially white.
Sure, yeah.
And that would obviously give you a great advantage because everyone on the map would stand out to you. You know, against a white backdrop, you could just easily see people. Now, I'm not saying that's how, you know, Global Offensive should be played, but I think some of the textures in some of these maps are so intricate and they're so elaborate that it actually becomes more a game about who's good at telling, you know, the player out from the background and not so much about who's good at, you know, the game. And I think that's a big issue. The maps look incredible, and they do. And I think architecturally speaking, Cobblestone and Overpass could probably be made to be competitive maps. And there are some really interesting dynamics. The whole idea that Cobblestone now, so much of the game obviously is going to revolve around who has the mid control. Not to go too much into detail, but there are fun things about this. But I think that the textures themselves are a big problem here. I think it becomes too much, essentially.
I would actually argue Overpass has a bigger chance of actually making it a good competitive map than Cobblestone. I think Cobblestone is far too chunky and boring, and I can't see really what the point is of owning, like, SCT. Is it even like how do you get information of where the terrorists are going? The only path you can get information is by the far left path from the CT bomb site, and kind of get information in mid. But if the T's actually just control that part of the map, they basically can do whatever they want, and the CTs have to gamble. And there's like, I don't see the tactical aspect of that map being good. I just see it being chunky, boring, and slow.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I could actually probably talk for a long time about how I think those different maps are going to play out, but I'm not sure I have time for it now. But I think there could be some fun to it. But what I fear is going to happen is, I think what we will see definitely is we'll see 4 members from the CT side rushing to the B bomb side initially, because the terrorists can get to the B almost as fast as the CTs. So you're going to have to rush there and throw a ton of grenades to make sure that nobody's rushing through. Then when you have that control, you can probably leave one guy with an AWP at the back of B, and he can just control one entrance utterly. There will be no way anyone can counterpeak that guy. And then the mid control is important, and then you can sort of walk back to the A bomb side and make sure no one's coming there. Now, from the terrorist point of view, you either rush the B bomb side and hope you win that duel. You know, you figure out a really cool flashbang, and then you probably just you're in the B bomb side, you've won. But if you don't do that, you're gonna have to play for slow. You're gonna have to play slowly, and you're gonna have to play for pickoffs. And if you do that on cobblestone, you will play very slowly, because if you look the wrong way at the wrong time and someone from the CT side sneaks behind your lines, you've just lost the game. Because even if he kills one of you and you know where he is, he's just gonna run and hide. There's a million places he can hide. So you got to hold the line, and that line can never be broken. So it'll become very, very slow to see. It'll either become lightning fast, B rush, or very slow. That's what I predict. And it's not exactly fun to watch in the long run.
Do you need to go now, Anders?
Yeah, probably do. It's about 10 minutes till the game is up. So
you can say hello, so goodbye then. Me and Devilwalk will close up the last part, and I'll just turn it to 2 boxes instead of 3.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, guys, and hope you guys are going to follow us, obviously, on Room on Fire, and keep up with what we're doing and everything else. So and thanks Thorin, and thanks Devilwalk, of course, for hanging out with me.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us.
Okay, so Anders had to leave us there, but me and Devilwalk will continue the show. Basically, to pick up from the point that Anders said there and what you'd said beforehand, that's like a key point. So I want to break it down when we were discussing this topic by different points. Okay, do we need more maps? Should they be these? And then should it be these 2 specific maps? Okay, because you made a key point there, which is that before you've played them, you can't even know whether they're good maps. Now, someone might think to themselves naively, okay, well, how can you criticize them being added then? Well, no, let's go the other way with that. Let's ask the person who's added the maps how they can know they're good maps. Since, again, nobody has played these competitively. So how does Valve, the all-knowing person at Valve, how does the person who made this decision know that these will be good competitive maps? The answer, obviously, is they don't, because it hasn't been played. Not only that, this is where I'd love it if there was real transparency, okay? At the moment, it was just announced that ESL's tournament will have these maps added. So someone who's just a fan who doesn't know politics might think, oh, does that mean ESL decided to add these? Now, people behind the scenes are all going to say, well, no, obviously they wouldn't do it. It's very likely that Valve decided that this was part of them giving you the money for the tournament. We want some say in the rules and maybe add these maps because we're going to add them into our own system. And so I would put my money that it was someone at Valve who decided that these maps come in. So it'd be nice to have transparency, who was the guy who made that decision. That way I could get an interview with that guy, or I could go and ask him directly, why did you add these maps? What is it about this map you think is good? Because then we could get somewhere. But that's not a fair debate to have of oh, well, because we haven't tried the map out, then we should just assume it's going to be good. That would be a silly way to do it, especially if, as I said before, there are maps that are good, that exist, called Cash, called Season, called Tuscan possibly. There's even versions of that are good. Or you can even use the old SE maps. Well, again, since there's no transparency, let's face it, it was never explained to the community by anyone officially why we can't use the special edition version of the maps, right?
No, I don't think. I mean, it's probably because Valve doesn't own the versions.
Yeah.
But that's probably why, but
which, unless there's something crazy behind the scenes that we're not aware of, it's quite unlikely that that's a problem that couldn't be solved. That's probably a problem where if you actually just go to those people and say, could we either use the map for free or could we pay you a small amount of money? And bearing in mind, we've got all these millions of dollars from the esports cases you could use for this. They would very likely be like, yes, I'd love for my map to be in competition. Let's do it. I think most of them would probably say you can use them for free, like every other tournament did, So that's why it's that's something that's made me a bit more annoyed about adding the maps like this. If it was the case that there were no other maps, I'd be willing to try it more, But when there's other maps that almost every pro player and fan agrees was better, well, I won't say fans, because fucking fans can think anything, dude. Let's just say pro players and pundits agreed the other versions were better. If we're not allowed to use those, then when you then throw 2 new maps that aren't really suitable onto us, it's a bit like, oh, that's annoying. Why can't we use the other ones? It makes you want to think that way. Let me think how to describe this. So one of the key areas, again, where you go down the list of different problems that annoyed me about this was that as I said, I'm not against adding new maps or even trying maps that we've never been played before. But then you come to an extra level of the debate, which is, should the brand new maps be added at a World Championship tournament 1 month beforehand? What do you think?
No, I definitely do not. I think we, like, players and teams could probably make it if they had like 2.5 months of practice. Actually, you have to consider that, as I've said before, that just having a map you've played for so long actually takes a lot of time to actually prepare on. Whilst this map just is another level or degree of actually trying to learn the map. You know, you have no idea how it's going to play out. So that's an extra problem, which creates extra tactics. And I also think that you're probably going to play this map about 20 times-ish ever in your career before you actually test the maps in a competitive setting, which I think is way too little. If you think about it, you have 20 days. You're 20 days of practice in 4 weeks. If you have any, like,
5 days a week schedule, sure.
Yeah, and you're probably gonna play them 1 or 2 times each day, at max too, like at the very, very max, because you know, you have 7 maps now. If you play 7 hours a day, that's you know, most teams practice 6 days, 6 hours each day in these. So one map is gonna fall off, and you're probably gonna play like 1 map each day of practice. So you play these maps 20 times in your entire career and play them in this World Championship tournament, which I think is just, yeah, I just don't think that's enough at all if you want to see high-level Counter-Strike on them.
The funny thing about that is, that argument is, crucially, it's actually not even made on how good the maps are. Notice at no point when you were describing there did you say, and you'll have only played it 12 maps, and since Cobble's total shit, that'll be really bad. You never said that. You just said the map. So actually, we could even make that debate, and it would still hold as a point. Even if they'd found 2 amazing maps that would be incredible, it wouldn't matter. The whole point that we're making here is, it's the fact that you can't have played the maps, no matter what quality they are as maps, enough to be really good on them in the same way that you need to be for a World Championship. Like, that's a key point to make, because even if this map turns out to be the best map ever, which we don't know yet, it still won't spoil the fact that at this next tournament, teams who play it won't have played enough for it to be really legit as, like, this is a map that we both know what we're going to do and we know what they're going to do, and we've played it many times. There's a good storyline for people to follow and the stats that we can give, and, you know, this will be like a high quality match. The chances are, even if this was the best map ever, we'll only see the best games on the map 3 months down the line, or 2 tournaments down the line, or when people have had a chance to play and then see what works and what didn't and then adapt to that. So it doesn't matter on this debate point even what the quality of the maps are. It's that you're doing it too early is the big problem, which is why I set it up like that. Should it be done a month out? Not only that, a month itself would be very different if it was a month, but you had 2 tournaments between, and they were like a build-up, and you played at this one, and so at least even if you don't attend this one, you get to see how Nip plays that map, and then Nip gets to play Hellraisers on this one, and then they play them at the final, and they go, okay, last time we played Hellraisers, we know what they did here. You don't even have that cycle. So to me, it's the fact that you've sort of messed up the World Championship aspect. Like, a World Championship, by definition, should be like teams playing maps they know and have practiced, and people are good on this one, and this guy's not as good on that one. So if he lets that through the map veto, he's kind of like accepting a gamble there. Meanwhile, if I pick it, I know it's because I'm strong on it and for these reasons. Unfortunately, making it a month out throws in a random element, even for the good teams, and even the teams who have practiced it, that shouldn't really be present, you know. And I want to ask you about this, okay? When everyone says this point, you've kind of addressed it here, everyone says, yeah, but you're a pro gamer, man. Your job is to learn new maps. You should learn this map. Like, what do you think of that?
I mean, yeah, sure. We're a professional gamer, and you know, it's our job to that doesn't make it right that, you know, I mean, Olympic Games, you know, people practice 4 years in a row for one tournament, basically, and, you know, 1 month, I just don't see how people can make it correct that 1 month is enough, or that it's, I agree that it's good bringing in new maps, but I also see, like, I mean, are making the conditions for the players worse a good thing, like for the tournament? I mean, basically what I see these maps going into, as you said, there's no data of them. You don't see anything about how it should be played. You only have guesses, basically. You have your practice and 20 games, and it's going to be a random clash of random things just clashing together, and whoever flip the coin the correct side, is going to win. That's how I see the maps being played, and it's just not a tactical aspect of Counter-Strike involved in it.
One of the big problems with that argument as well, of like a pro gamer's job, is that when someone says that, even if it's someone in the industry, I'll include them in this, it suggests to me that they don't actually understand what makes teams good on maps in Counter-Strike. Because, listen, Forest has been playing like Inferno for fucking 15 years. Bearing in mind the 1.6 still has similar architecture and similar concepts that apply. So he's been playing it 15 years. Meanwhile, Devilwalk has been playing Inferno for, let's say, what? 5 years? 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that means, by their logic, that Devilwalk will never be as good as Forest on Inferno. No, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's possible that Devilwalk's team could be better on Inferno than Forest's on it, and yet they've been playing for 10 more years. That's because it's not that these teams haven't learned the maps that they're bad on. It's that the qualities needed to be good on the maps are different for every map, and therefore that's why Hellraisers don't play Train, and why Very Games don't play Train. It's not that they have never played the map and that they've never even tried it. It's that they weren't good on it, so they focused on the other ones. It's impossible to be good on every map. Now listen, NiP came about as close as you could be. Like, even their worst map, they're sort of pretty good on, but they're not as good on that map as they are on the best map. And so it's actually a stupid set of logic to suggest that, like, oh, it's not practice. No, these people, here's the thing, here's the key. They are pro gamers. So here's what they're going to do as pro gamers. They're going to practice these maps. But it doesn't fucking matter that they'll practice these maps, because even the best team in the world won't be good enough on these maps to make it like the World Championship, so it'll be really legit and an awesome game when they all play there. It's unlikely that that'll happen, even though they are pro gamers and they will do their job and practice the maps. For the maps to be really good, it has different factors. Like, you have to understand the context of what the map's about. What are the core principles that make this map good? A team that's good on this map, how do you attack them? No one will know any of these things in 1 month. We might have someone might get really lucky, or some genius might figure out one of those things. Okay, he might figure out like something that we don't know, like a one key smoke here really opens the map up and you can attack in this way, and that might help him at this tournament. Yeah, okay, we want to get. It's good that he gets a benefit from that, but in general, it's very unlikely that most of the top teams will have a good sense of how to play the map and what to do in it. And yet that's the problem. On all the other maps, they will all have this sense. And even maps that they hadn't played as much. So think of the teams who never went to ESEA. Some of them might have never played Season, or they might have played it 4 times. Well, at least even if we brought Season in now, they could watch all those games that you guys have played on it in ESEA, or they could watch NiP play it, or they could even ask someone from NiP, like, oh, what do you do when you do this? That's impossible on these brand new maps. You can see that even the argument of like other maps doesn't work as well on this one. And that whole thing about like the pro gamers thing, like, it does fall down when you think of it like that. Like, it's not that like, oh, so should we all fire Very Games because they haven't learned how to play Train? Like, no, they're just not as good on it. They can practice 1,000,000 hours. It won't make you good on the map. What do you think?
I mean, I just, like, I don't even know like what the important areas on either of overpass or cobblestone is gonna be. Overpass especially, I'm very, very blinded when I look at the map. I just don't know. We have no info of the meta game, how people would like, what's easy to actually execute. A strategy could look completely different, exactly like you mentioned, with just one smoke coming out and everyone using it to its potential. And you know nothing about that. It's I just don't really have anything else to add because I don't have any info. It's just stupid in a way.
Plus, it's not that being the first to invent something shouldn't be rewarded. It should, but the key thing is it should only be rewarded once, which is the first time people are learning the map. Then you do get a little advantage, okay? So say you had a small tournament first where this map would be played, and someone won this tournament doing something really innovative. Okay, that's cool, but that shouldn't happen at a world championship. You shouldn't be able to have some so undiscovered maps that even discovering one tiny little thing could win you the whole tournament when you're not even close to the best team.
That's actually why meta games in different games change, is because someone had an advantage, coming up with a new thing, then everyone uses it. Like, that's just normal.
I also think that, listen, people always give an unfair example there where they sort of say like, oh, well, if you're the better team, you will adapt and you'll win. Like, that's actually a logical fallacy, because within that, you've created circumstances where your definition is, well, if you're the better team, you will win. So I'll continue that sentence. Therefore, the team that wins is the better team. Well, then, in that case, every team who loses isn't the better team. So you've already set up a scenario where your own logic supports itself, and that's not based on anything. It's only based on the fact that you've just said the first part of the sentence is what makes the second half true. So, for example, if NiP plays now and they lose to Overgaming on this map, well, then by their logic, Overgaming is better than NiP. Well, yeah, that's correct. Yep. But only if that's your logic. If I make Overgaming ride fucking bicycles and kick footballs through goal, maybe Hellraisers would be the best at that. At the end of the day, it's Counter-Strike. We're trying to use the best at Counter-Strike, not the best at playing this map once with no practice. That's not Counter-Strike. We're trying to see, when everyone's played all these maps and everyone's played a bunch of tournaments and they've all played a bunch, once we get to the World Championship, that's where we want to see who is the best. Who's the best under pressure? Who can adapt better? Who's had the best things that they've planned for? These are the qualities we want to give more points to than are you the team who first of all figured out one gimmick that'll work once. That's something that can be a factor, but it shouldn't be shouldn't be bigger than the other ones I said there, like practice this map, know the team and stuff like that. Like even if your team won, okay, let's say you were still playing in fnatic in this lineup, okay, and you went to ESL One, and somehow your team, let's say Pronax did come up with some genius flash that no one had figured out, and you won the whole tournament, you yourself deep down would still have to even be like, yeah, okay, we weren't really the best team. We just had like sort of a gimmick, like, you know, maybe NiP was better than us, or
mega practiced these two maps and they could only ban out one, and you know, we automatically have a one map advantage in each best of three. Just yeah, I don't know. I would definitely agree with me saying in that aspect with this time frame that it's kind of like, are we really the best team?
Yeah, just add an extra element of it's not as legit, okay? It's all, listen, it's all, at the beginning of this debate, I already debated whether or not your team was the best when you won the World Championship. Well, if it had been on a random map that you had one gimmick on, I could have had I wouldn't even have had to make those other points. I'd just say, well, you won on the bullshit map that no one else played, you know? Yeah. So it'd add in an extra element of uncertainty. And if there's anything we don't want in a fucking World Championship, it's more uncertainty as to whether the team who wins is the best team in the world. Ideally, we'd like it to be where, even if we don't, like, even when I thought fnatic wasn't, I didn't just say outright, like, oh, they couldn't be the best team. I just said, like, oh, I want to see the next two tournaments to prove. And if you'd have won the next two tournaments, I probably would have been like, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they were the best team at that tournament, and I just didn't see, like, a curve in, like, them turning the corner and becoming the best team. That would have been the start of the story of you being the best team, you know?
Yep.
So, one of the weird elements of, like, that whole debate is that I broke it down like this so we can make it, like, our specific points. So one of the elements that's gotten really lost in all the people arguing back and forwards about these maps added, because you notice most people have either, if they're against the maps, they argue that the maps are shit, which is correct in its own right. And if they're for the maps, the only argument they'll ever make is like, well, change is good and this is some change, therefore it's good. They'll never address how good is the map and should it be a month out. They'll always just make it really, both people are being too simplistic. So here's another area where we can break it down. I've seen almost no one debating the random third map veto. No one seems to have properly read that post or understand it, because as far as I understand, tell me if I'm wrong, okay? The old map system, when we had 5 maps, went like this. I ban one, you ban one, I ban one, you ban one. There's 3 maps left. I pick one, you pick one, and the last one is the third map. That's how it used to go, right? Now in the new system with 7 maps, it now goes, I ban one, you ban one. There's 7, remember, instead of 5. So there's a second ban phase. I ban one, you ban one. There's 3 maps left. And you remember in the old scenario, we picked one each and then the last one was the third. Now, before we pick a map, a random number generator picks one of the 3 maps to be the deciding map. And then the other 2, well, there's only 2 left anyway. So we're just essentially forced to pick those, right?
Is it really that in the best of 3?
Have I got it wrong?
I thought it was, maybe I read it wrong too. I thought it was in the best of 1. You ban until there's 3 left, and then you flip a coin, and you know, one map. That's what the one you play.
Okay, so that's best of 3 I'm talking about. We're talking about best of 1. You mean?
The best of 1, I think, is the most random one, where you just flip a coin, and one of the maps are gonna be decided. But I think in the best of 3 scenario, you ban one, and you pick the 2 maps, but the last third decider is between that flipped coin between the last 3 maps.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I've got it wrong then. So it's for best of 1, you do the flipped coin for the map itself anyway. And then for best of 3, you pick the maps, but then there's 3 maps left for the third, and then that's just randomly picked. Now, it's obvious to anyone who looks at this scenario that the person who thought that up didn't think that's the best system. They thought, well, if they've got 2 bans, what if they just ban out overpass and cobble? I've got a solution to that. Let's make an element where if they dare to leave it in, then it can randomly be picked as the third map, even if both teams don't want to play it. You think that's right? That's probably what happened, right?
Yep.
And that's actually kind of fucking sinister, dude, because now you can get into an insane scenario. We're in this old scenario we had before. When we do our bans, at least if we both agree, well, okay, let's say Hellraisers plays Very Games. I hate Train. Yeah, I hate Train too. Let's just agree not to have Train be in the series. Okay, deal, let's play. In this world, Train could be the third map, even though both teams don't want to play it. So you've actually taken like ban and pick phase out of the hands of the team. That's obviously bad, right? For like a world championship.
I mean, it just creates another element of uncertainty, as you mentioned, and you don't want that in a world championship. So, I mean, I like the actual best of 3, like the half of it. I mean, why not add just 2 more bans and get the third map? Like, I just don't understand that. But for the best of 1, that could actually make or break like a team of Nips caliber to actually go out in the group stage.
Well, I mean, it's probably
the best of ones.
Here's the thing: it could break Nip, obviously, in case they got the best map of the other team every time and gave them a better chance, the opposing team that they were playing. In general, though, Nip's one of the few teams who won't be as bad because they play every map. But listen, a team like Hellraisers, like I said there, Hellraisers' map is trained, so it won't apply to them, obviously. Let's pick a team who doesn't play Nuke, for example. So Na'Vi don't play Nuke, right?
Oh, we don't.
So Fnatic and Na'Vi don't play Nuke. Let's say Fnatic and Na'Vi somehow through the random selection, well, actually they could obviously throw Nuke there, but their second worst map they could get every single time in the group versus a team who's the best on that map. And again, the team who's the best might not even choose it for that reason. And then they end up going out in a weird scenario that would never happen if it had been Inferno or if it had been Dust 2 or whatever it was, you know. It would have never happened in that scenario. They'd have had to just lose straight up because they're worse, you know. Not because they somehow got this weird map that, like, you can't ban the 2 maps, so that's why you got that one that even the other team might not have wanted to play themselves. So that's another scenario, by the way. You could have a world championship where 2 teams play their second worst map each and both are really bad on it. And that's a map you're going to show us in our world championship. 2 teams playing a map they don't even like and aren't good on. Oh, that's world championship level CS, is it? Come on, man. This is like a terrible system.
Yeah. I don't have that much of a problem in the best of 3 because you actually pick one, like both pick one of their best maps. Obviously, it would be favorable if they just keep the banning phase going and everyone gets a map both are like pseudo okay with. But in the best of 1, that's just randomized between 3 maps. That's just wow. It's just retarded in my opinion.
Sure. Okay, so
I mean, what else to say?
No, I agree. There's not much more you can say. Because the problem with this scenario is, like I say, unfortunately, all the people who say they love this decision and they think the whole thing is great, I've noticed none of them are willing to actually debate these points. Nobody's saying, oh, well, I think Cobble's... Like, when Exist made his post that, you know, like, maybe we should try change, I didn't see any posts from him like, and what I like about Cobble is this, and I think on Overpass you can do this. He never made those points. He didn't want to debate that. He just wanted to make his one point that he thinks is good overall as a blanket statement, and that's it. There's nothing to do about that. I think that's almost every topic to talk about there. Let me see. Oh, I'll say one more thing as a point to close this up. One of the reasons... When I said that point of like, well, who is the person at Valve who makes that decision to have these maps added? Like, who is he and why aren't we allowed to contact him or find out from him why he even added the maps? The reason why everyone will say, but it doesn't matter that we don't know who it is. Because what they'll say is this, Devilwalk. They'll say, well, don't be ungrateful. You know, Valve's putting $250,000 into this tournament, and they've just decided they want these maps. So listen, don't be impolite. Just play the maps. That would all be great if really Valve had just taken $250K out of their pocket, put it in a tournament and said, listen, for my tournament, I don't care what you think. I'm going to make these maps because I like them. I couldn't argue with that. I could say the maps are bad and I could say I don't think they should be in. But ultimately, I'd have to say to some degree, nah, okay, you should get some say over it because you're putting up all the money. Now, the problem with that is Valve aren't putting up any of the money. They've set up a system where we contribute money and then they get some of that money. And this is awesome, by the way. They get some of the money and then they put it towards a tournament where if it was me and you who put our like $10 together, we wouldn't know how to give the money to ESL to run an event, right? There's not a system in place. So that's all great. But the fact that we essentially contribute some of the money, I think eventually, even if not now, that eventually has to have some factor in it, the fact that we contributed it. Like, we have to have some sort of say, or there has to be some sort of vote. Like I should get it. I've suggested this before. Maybe there's 3 different cases, and one is an ESL case, and one's a Dreamhack case, and one's a, I don't know what the third one would be, ESWC case. And by buying the Dreamhack case, that means I want Dreamhack to have a tournament. And then, because the Dreamhack has a tournament, maybe then Dreamhack can have a say in how their tournament's done differently to ESL. And then maybe I can even have some say in, if Dreamhack and ESL offer different map pools, well, now maybe I'll put my money into ESLs if they have a better map pool. Maybe I'd prefer them to have the money. Like, this would be the same system, the same money exactly, going to the same person. But in theory, it adds an element where, like, the fan can not only give his money, he can also have a little bit of say in it. And hopefully we could all head towards the best system here. What do you think of something like that?
I mean, I think generally, I think that Valve should probably talk a lot more with the professional players and actually get insight and feedback. Because if they actually release this info way before, and we could actually check out the maps, you know, give feedback, might even be able to change a couple of things about the maps to make them like competitively ready. But right now, it's just, here's the map and play it, you know, and we don't know how it works or anything. I just think that we as players have to contact Valve or vice versa and actually have a discussion and actually, you know, talking to each other. Because, you know, if this is going to continue on, and, you know, we have these kind of veto systems that's not really favorable for anyone, it's just a coin flip, and we have maps where we don't really know if they're good or bad. I mean, they could be really good, but we could have figured that out beforehand, actually, before announcing this and before actually like taking this gamble with Valve. And
yeah, it's just having it's a bit unnecessary, right? Like, we could have had all the same circumstances, but we could have done it better. And not only that, it's not enough to say, oh, well, you know, maybe they didn't understand all the problems of this. Well, no, now let's say they watch this episode here and we just brought up all these problems. Then they could at least fix it for next time. The next time they do this, they could put a system in place. That's the problem. Not only didn't they do it before, but they're not going to watch this show. They're not going to talk to you or me. They're not going to ask Devilwalk, should we have had those 2 maps? And so they won't change it next time. They'll do the same thing next time if they want to do it. And so we never get any closer to fixing the problem. That's why the problem with the lack of communication is there. Like, I've always said this as a point. In general, okay, I agree that pro players should have input as to what changes are made in the game. I definitely don't think that Valve should listen to everything pro players say. I know pro players who would fucking whine all day. Like, I know pro players who hate AWP. They don't use the AWP and they're not good with it, who would whine all day long, like, it shouldn't do as much damage, it shouldn't kill you in one shot, you know, like, they'd make all sorts of stupid changes that would actually ruin the game. So what should happen is, you should listen to them, and if they make a good point that you yourself think makes sense, yeah, take it on board. But the key thing is that you have to listen in the first place. You can't just assume that they don't have anything interesting to say, they won't have something, or then you'll never even get the chance to have a good point. But at the same time, don't go the other way and just take it on board 100%. That's also an area where I get a bit annoyed at the NIP players being so pro-Valve and always finding a way to logically be in favour of what they say. Because NIP have had unfair treatment where they've had more access to Valve and they've been to go and see Valve and they've had to go to talk to more Valve more. Well, why should NIP get to have more input into their maps and stuff than Very Games? There's no logic to that. That's actually unfair. If this was all going through one pro forum where every pro could make his post, and then it's up to Valve which they listen to and which they give more credence to, okay, that's one thing. But at the moment, someone who plays for Dignitas doesn't even have contact with Valve to have the same input as this NIP guy did over whether this gun should have $700 cost or $500. He didn't get any input whatsoever, which is also, by the way, kind of like dodgy for the integrity of the game, that one guy gets input and the other one doesn't. I mean, if I had to guess, you've never spoken to Valve directly, right?
I've met people from Valve at tournaments, but I haven't spoken to Valve via email contact or something. I was about to write a mail when the new Mirage came out to Valve, but they made a couple of updates and I thought it was fine for the time being, and I kind of just let it down. But I haven't really had any interaction with Valve, rather than actually meeting some of the guys on the event.
So I actually have told this story on an episode of podcast, but fucking like 1,000 people watch podcasts, so no one's even going to remember this story. Okay, people don't know this, but you know, people one of the reasons why people dislike Lurpis is because they think that he's like just negative about everything in CSGO, and he hates CSGO as a game, and because he hates it, he's biased, and he's always going to sort of like take every opportunity to shit on Valve and all these stuff. And they think that even though he does events, you know, he just does that for money and he doesn't really like the game. What people will not know, because there's only me and him will know this, is when CSGO was announced, I was against it for reasons that I actually put in a column. Like, for example, with Valve's past history of doing changes to CS and updates and putting things in, I thought, like, it's very unlikely that they would make a better game than 1.6. So to me, it didn't make sense to change, okay. Now, Lurpis, at the time, actually said to me, like, okay, I agree. Like, I don't think they'll make a better game, but actually, I don't mind. Like, I think I just play for the competition. And so actually, I'll play this new game no matter what. Even if CSGO is not that good, I'll probably try and compete and make a team. And then, initially, when the game came out as beta and it was quite bad, all these pros were complaining, okay? And so Lurpis said, like, oh, they've set up like a forum where pros can join this forum and they can post about what they think should be changed. And so Lurpis was one of the main people who posted tons of comments in this forum and was checking each thread to see was Valve responding to this player when he said something. And he was even going out there and helping get people into the forum. So players from like CIS countries, the Eastern European guys who didn't have any contact to Valve, he would go and he would tell them, like, hey, come and join the pro forum, like, we're all going to give our input and maybe we can make the game better since we're going to have to play it anyway, like, we're going to have to switch, so even if you don't like CSGO, give your opinions, maybe Valve can change it. He got all these people in there, and he noticed after a couple of months there was next to nobody responding from Valve. People weren't commenting in the threads, they weren't even reading them. Eventually, the pros had just gotten so bored of it, they didn't even bother posting comments. And that's actually the first time that he came out publicly. I think it was an interview with like PC Gamer, and he said like, oh, Valve isn't even listening to pros. They don't particularly care. Like, the game's going to come out with all these problems that people have suggested. And that's when everyone started to like dislike him because they thought he was just bashing the game. And unfortunately, GetRight came out and said like, no, actually Valve's listening to pros, because again, some of the NIP players had like more sway with Valve than other people did. They had more direct contact. And so unfortunately, what people don't know is this isn't a problem that's happened now, and now we need to say, hey Valve, could we have a forum so pros can talk to you? This has been a problem from day one that they haven't addressed, but it wasn't as big a deal anymore because they weren't organising tournaments. That everyone had just sort of realised, like, okay, Valve can't be helped, but whatever, let's forget about them. But now Valve are suddenly right in everyone's face, making all the decisions. So now we need this pro forum, right, Devilwalk? We need somewhere where everyone could post their opinion, no matter what it is, and they could see it at least.
Yeah. I mean, pro players doesn't have like a better brain than anyone. I mean, there's just tons of shit on HLTV with opinions and shit, but I think pros have the same degree of bad decisions and bad complaints and everything like that. But I mean, all of us pro players still go to the forums of HLTV and check people's opinions. I mean, that's just...
Yeah.
That's what we do. I mean,
sometimes they make a good point as well, right? Like,
yeah.
Every now and then they might make one and you're like, oh, I'm glad I read that.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think it has to come at some point. I mean, if you've seen Blizzard with StarCraft 2, they had people, you know, chatting on friend lists on Steam accounts, or not Steam account, Battle.net accounts, chatting with each other, getting feedback from the pros. You know, what's OP, what's not. You know, and interacting with the professional scene. Whilst I just think we really need that right now. In Counter-Strike, yeah,
that's the key thing. I would describe it like this: Valve doesn't have to change anything, but they at least have to listen, at least hear everyone's points out, and then listen. If the guy at Valve, whoever the fuck he is, this mystery guy who has like a trench coat on and his hat's really low and we can't see his eyes, whoever he is who's making these decisions, at least fucking listen to what people are saying. Then don't do it if you have a good reason for it, but. Not even listening is like really ignorant, especially then when people are giving you the credit for like, oh, you're helping the scene so much and giving all this money. Like, when you add it all up, there has to be, if you want all this money and to do these awesome things, then at least go the rest of the distance, because it's not even a big deal. It wouldn't be that hard to have someone check a forum every now and then.
No, not at all. I mean, especially if you have like, I mean, even the Facebook groups, we have like professional gamers giving their opinion on a daily basis on the practice groups and stuff like that. And at first they had good contact with everyone. As you said, I wasn't a pro back then, but I know they had good communication. But especially with even back when they had like these show matches with CSGO. You know, they were very, very interested in getting feedback from players and actually changing the game. But now it's just like, now it's okay. Now we got it.
What's funny is people always make the point as well that one of the arguments I always hear in favor of maps and stuff is like, I think one of the reasons why Valve would probably tell you that they didn't let the special editions be used in their World Championships is because to them, they want the version used in the World Championship to identical to the one that the guy plays in matchmaking, okay? They don't want it to be slightly different, so they don't want the guy watching to be like, oh, that's not on the map I play, and them to lose interest somehow. At that part, I don't understand, like, why he'd lose interest, but anyway, let's follow their premise. First of all, you could add the maps to matchmaking as a second set of maps, so that when you go to that screen, it says Dust 2 Special Edition, and you untick the box you want to play, and again, the community chooses which they want to play. Maybe the people watching the tournament used to only play the old map, and now they add that one, and they go, oh, I'll play that one as well, and there we go, problem solved there, Valve.
I mean, like, that's people, they wanted everyone to play the same map, but they had the special editions, and the community was trying to choose they choose the maps, but now they kind of forced us out of the choosing process, I guess.
Yeah, that's another issue as well, is that's also, I think, the reason why they don't want to add a map like Season, or they don't want to add like Toscan or any of these other maps, is because they haven't already gone and put those into the matchmaking in the same way. So they don't want that. Again, they want it to be like this way. Here's the point I was going to make. That's actually brought me back around. That logic only works if CS is intended to be just a game for people on public, and esports is just a little thing on the side that's just a joke. That's fine, right? If Valve hosted their own one-off tourney every 6 months and it had 20k first place and they provided all the money, then if they had only those maps, you know what? I actually think the scene would probably have just kept the special edition maps for all the other tournaments. That one-off Valve map, we'd all play that one, we'd try and win it. The reason why we've all changed away from them to the Valve maps is because this tournament is worth 100 grand first place. It's worth like 10 other tournaments won. So as a result, we want to switch all the small tournaments to fit that because we all want to be ready for that tournament and have the best practice to be good on those tournaments. Now, the reason why is because you've made this like the World Championship. This is esports. We're trying to make it esports here. So at that point, you have to then make a decision. Like, it can't be everything is balanced, even esports tournaments. For the casual guy who plays for fun, you have to now balance the esports tournament on its own merits, right? You have to balance it by what's best for that tournament. So if that means using... Like, listen, they already did it. Here's what confuses me. They've already done it with Cash anyway. You're allowed to play Cash instead of Train. We're allowed that change of that map. Why can't we have the other ones?
I have no idea. I mean, there was a point... Wasn't it a point taken that Cash should be in the rotation, like, even before the first major?
Listen, I thought... That's another thing. I'll make a general point. I didn't want to get too muddied in this when we had Anders on. But actually, like I said... I actually think that the majors, the biggest downside of the major tournaments is that it sort of spoiled the map pool. Because the special editions were really good. Like, first of all, Inferno and Train, I thought were much better in the special editions. Even the Nuke one had, like, interesting factors. I think there's one or two, like, maybe Dust 2, maybe you could argue back and forth. But in general, I think most people watching, the pundits and the players, like the special editions in general more. And especially on maps like, the two biggest is Mirage and Train. They were much better before. Like, people used to love Mirage. It was actually becoming one of the most played maps. It was really good. And it made it so every tournament wasn't just like we see now with Inferno, right?
It was Mirage and Inferno a lot. But I think Mirage was definitely the most played map. On gather channels, all that kind of stuff, like behind the scene, Mirage for sure was the most played map. And most balanced map. And just most... Like, it had this interesting development where, you know, having a 10-5 scoreline on either T or CT wouldn't be detrimental. Both can be, like, extremely good on either side of the map, which is rare in Counter-Strike. You know, now it's like, Train, you have to have 10 maps, like 10 rounds on the CT side, otherwise you're going to lose. But on that map, it was so much different, I think, and that's what made it so good as well.
And here's another thing, okay, so we had those 5 maps were in general, okay, here's the way to describe it. You know, like in League of Legends or a MOBA like that, or Dota 2, one of the really good ways you can describe how ideal balance should be is they should... The way you know a champion is overpowered is if he has to be 100% ban pick. Because that means that if you pick him, you pretty much always win. And otherwise, if you can't pick him, you just always ban him because you know you're going to lose. That tells you that the champion's too overpowered, right? Now, in an ideal world, every champion in one of those games, yes, one of them would be very good, but he wouldn't win in every circumstance. They would all be situational. So depending on the strengths of my players and my team, this time I might pick this champion, but if your team's totally different, you don't have to pick that just because he's so overpowered. In the same sense with maps, if people are 100%, well, not 100%, let's say people 99% of the time are banning a map, like I think Train was getting played something ridiculous like 10% of the time or something, that means that like essentially it's super broken. Like you're either amazing on that map or complete shit. Like it's gone too far there. Yep. Instead, you want it to be where, okay, very games don't play Train, but someone like Fnatic, who likes Train Special Edition, even though we know NiP is the best team on Train Special Edition, we like it as well, so we're willing to play them on it. Whereas otherwise, you'd be an idiot in the Valve world not to ban a map like that if they really were godlike on it, you know, and you were even slightly worse. So it gets you to a scenario where we had 5 good maps to Special Editions. Then you add in Cash, which nearly every player I know thought was a good map. All the pros, they thought it was worth playing. This is a point I didn't put in my article because like, I already know, though, okay, like, until now, I would have said Cash isn't coming back because it wasn't in their mem in the same way. And I would have said the special editions are not coming back. So, in general, I haven't made these points in articles because they're kind of a waste of time because what's the point in complaining about stuff that can't be changed because Valve isn't going to change it? But I even thought one of the factors that made very games drop off being number one was the maps changes. Because when they became number one, it was on the special editions, and they were one of the best on Cash, if you remember. They'd beaten NiP twice on Cash when they'd played it. So when you go to the major, yeah, they're still very good because they're one of the best teams in the world. But you've took some of their maps. First of all, you've taken one map away that they're really good on, Cash. You took Season, that can't be played anymore except ESEA, and they were decent on that. Then you've made some of the maps slightly worse, and you've made it so they definitely can't play Train now because they're not good on it at all. You see what I mean? All you've done is you haven't like ruined it, but you've slightly taken some of their advantages away and maximized some of their weaknesses. So I actually think that the point I'm making here is that it'd be one thing if there was no option and then they presented like, here, we've got these 2 maps, let's try them out. But if there were options that we all have seen so far do work, then can't we try those? That's why I want to ask that. Like, you know, can't we just try those?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think Cash is actually a good, like a really solid map. It has the same element as the old Mirage, where I'm not really sure it's heavily favored. Yeah, someone can be really good on the T side, but also see that people can be really solid on the CT side. Like it's more style dependent than actual like favorable advantages for either side, I think. And that's why I like the map so much as well, and I think most of the people like him. And for Tusken, I'm not really sure if you can just push Tusken in like it's an okay map. We haven't really tried that either, but we know the basic elements of it and the importance of the tactical aspect of it since previous games.
No, that's a key point to make, though, isn't it? It's that even if Tusken itself hasn't been used, at least it has a foundation where, like me and you could sit down now and I could tell you, like, these sorts of things probably work just from how it was even played in 1.6, even without knowing this version. Same way as on Inferno, I could tell you things there that are 1.6 things that apply still. Obviously, not everything does, but there's general concepts that apply. Whereas, obviously, with the new maps, I mean, you could say that about Cobble, I guess, because at one point, like 13 years ago, it was competitive, but it wasn't. Even that wasn't a good competitive map. So it's not like I could give you anything good from that, you know. In fact, I'd probably tell you stuff that depress you, like, oh, usually on the old version of Cobble, everyone just rushed the massive B bomb site every time, and as long as you just smoked, it was like super hard to hold that if you were the terrorist side. Like to even get in there was impossible, and then if you got in there, you couldn't. It got retaken.
If the CTs actually got an AWP up on the like far point of the bomb site, you lost B, like ST.
You could just hold it with one guy. He could kill all 5 as they came out. So that's what's funny is that the one map out of the 2 that does have competitive history has a really bad competitive history, and we're all glad it got taken out the fucking map pool. So that's not even a positive that I can give you there. But you can see that if we put Tusken in, at least you could say it has a background to understand how to play it. Whereas, like you're saying, no one knows how to play overpass.
No.
I mean, Anders tried to speculate there, and some of the shit he said there might not even be valid in 2 weeks, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that Overpass has a higher success rate than Cobblestone, and even though I know nothing about Overpass, like, at all. But, you know, I think I saw a video with Steel and some other guy from the American scene. they made like a bunch of a list of video and a list of changes to overpass to make it like competitively ready. Because right now it's like you don't really know what part of the map you want to control. It's like SCT, do you really need to push out and take control over the right side of the map? Because you already have the 2 bomb sites like so close together that like half of the map is not really relevant, I guess. And whilst it offers an option, but it's not really relevant. And if you moved like 1 bomb site, so they wouldn't be so close together, it would be a much better map, because CTS and Ts have contested areas where they have to actually contest. But right now it seems like it's much like you can just let terrorists have map control because you don't need it, basically. But yeah, I don't know. I think they really needed to talk and make those like legitimately like important changes. For example, like maybe moving the bomb site to make it a really good map. But right now we don't really have that chance. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But
I think we've pretty much talked everything to death there. So that's going to be the end of this episode. Do you have any final words for everyone?
I mean, I guess thanks for watching. Thanks for having me, Duncan. It's a pleasure as always, even though you're pretty mean sometimes.
I just ask questions, mate. I always allow you to answer them however you want to answer them, you know.
Yeah. But otherwise, you can follow me on Facebook, Devilwalk CSGO, and at fnatic Devilwalk on Twitter. And you'll see updates, content, videos, whatever about the new CSGO team, and you can follow us through there. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. Glad it's over almost.
Okay.
And
that's it.
yeah,